Big thanks to everyone who filled in over the last couple of weeks for me as I was taking some time off. So Chloe Friesen was here, Corey Funk was here hosting, and Faith Fundell was here hosting as well. There may even have been some Julie Buckingham in there. So thanks very much to everybody for covering. It's 3 minutes to 6. Morning show's on till 8:37 a.m. And we have heat warnings across much of southern Manitoba today, and also a yellow level warning for parts of the north, the Paw, Flinway, and Norway House as we continue with this hot weather. Let's say good morning to the team. Corey Funk is here. He's going to be covering the commute, and he'll be on the air with that. He's also our show director. Good morning. Good morning to Mr. Abby Adiemi. Nice to see you. Abby is our senior tech in the show. He covers your weather on the program on air. And there's Darren Marash, who is the producer of our live streaming. So if you're watching there, I always say hello to Darren and weigh in on anything you see or hear. Well, let's hear headlines now. It's 2 minutes to 6 o'clock, and Heather Wells joins us live. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, Manitoba's only supervised drug consumption site fully opens August 11th. That's according to the province, a spokesperson telling CBC News Aboriginal Health and Wellness, which will operate the site on Henry Street, has more training lined up for staff. We'll hear about that coming up as well. A former NDP cabinet minister responsible for Manitoba Hydro says governments haven't done enough to ensure Manitoba has enough wind power. Tim Sale was energy minister between 2002 and 2004 when Gary Doer was premier. Sale pushed to create the wind farm in St. Leon and now is disappointed Manitoba has only 2 wind farms. We'll hear more coming up in our next local news at 6:30.
All right. Thank you, Heather.
Thank you.
So lots to think about there. In the first hour of the program, we're going to be talking a little bit of politics. Ryan Tumulty will join us to look at what's happening at the federal level this hour on the program. In addition, heat warnings continue across Winnipeg, as I mentioned, and one housing advocate wants better planning when extreme temperatures hit for those who are unhoused, especially here in Winnipeg. So we're going to hear more about what her ask is. And then later in the program this morning, Canadian Blood Services is going to talk to us about a significant drop that they've seen in blood donations recently. This data for across the country will dig to find out where Manitoba sits on that front.
On cue. Constance Wu made a name for herself for her very funny role in the smash hit Crazy Rich Asians and starring in the sitcom Fresh Off the Boat.
Just gotta get a jump on my homework. Love you. You love me?
What are you hiding?
Success hasn't been easy, but Constance is back in the spotlight starring in a new sci-fi thriller. Q, this morning at 10:30 in Newfoundland, and on CBC Listen, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is World Report. Good morning. I'm Marcia Young. Crews battling wildfires in France and Spain will also be fighting the weather. Another heat wave will bring drier conditions and higher winds. More than 300,000 people in both countries have been forced from their homes. Journalist William Denslow visited an evacuation center in Bordeaux, France. And we'll have that story for you in just a moment. We're having some technical difficulties here this morning. At least 50 people have been injured by an earthquake in Japan. A 7.1 magnitude quake rattled the southern island of Kyushu today. A roof cam in Kumamoto City captures the moment the quake struck. There are reports of damage to roads and bridges. A dozen buildings have collapsed. Officials are warning of possible aftershocks. They have told 150,000 people to head to evacuation centers. Power was knocked out to thousands of homes. Rail service was suspended, and authorities say 3 nearby nuclear facilities have not been damaged. And now back to our top story. Crews are battling those wildfires in Spain and in France, and the weather is proving to be a problem. We've got William Denslow, who visited an evacuation center in Bordeaux, France. Still having some technical trouble here on CBC News. We will get you that story in just a moment. Some 300,000 Haitians living in the U.S. are now without protected immigration status. The designation was terminated on Monday. The Supreme Court made the decision last month. Franz Andre is an advocate for asylum seekers in Montreal. He says many of them now fear what could happen to their relatives south of the border.
the Asian community here. There's quite a few of them who have family members in the States. This is what I call deportation by proxy.
Community groups and advocates in Montreal say Canada needs to support those facing possible deportation. But at least for now, Canada's tightened asylum rules mean only exceptional cases will be allowed in the country. The now revoked designation was initially granted to Haitians after the 2010 earthquake. Back to that top story I'm promising you about the crews battling wildfires in Europe. Here's William Denslow.
The wait for answers continues. Over 1,000 people, along with their pets, spent another night here at the Bordeaux Exhibition Centre after being forced to evacuate their homes. Many questioning when or if they'll be able to return home. The site is transforming. Over the weekend, it was a place to sleep and have a meal. Now there are legal and medical services, along with a growing volume of donations. A sign that, for some, the prospect of a quick return home seems unlikely. More than 40,000 hectares of land have burned in the region's wildfires, and the blazes remain less than 15 kilometres from Bordeaux. The mayor says he's planning for all eventualities. French President Emmanuel Macron visited the area on Monday and met firefighters. He said the blaze is unprecedented. For a second straight night, the fires were held in check. Roughly 100 kilometres of trees have been cleared as authorities seek to create line breaks and remove the fuel that sustained this fire for days. Containment efforts appear to be working, but temperatures are rising. Parts of France could soar above 40 degrees Celsius this week. The hotter weather is expected to complicate firefighting efforts, a battle, officials say, that could be waged for months. William Denslow for CBC News, Bordeaux.
Johnson & Johnson has agreed to pay an estimated $5.5 billion to settle lawsuits over its baby powder. The product contains talcum powder and is alleged to cause ovarian cancer. The company's vice president of litigation called the claims meritless and says Johnson & Johnson was willing to settle for closure. The long-running legal battle covers 76,000 claims, and while Johnson & Johnson has denied that its talc-based products cause cancer, it has since changed the formula of its baby powder. Volunteer fire departments in Northern Ontario are working to keep bushfires at bay. This year's wildfires have already displaced nearly 3,000 people in the region. As Sarah Law reports, volunteer support is crucial in battling fires in rural areas.
We got lots of bush roads that the fire trucks can't make it in.
Leon Nianakisik is the fire chief of White Sand First Nation and Armstrong. The close-knit communities north of Thunder Bay are under evacuation as wildfires continue to threaten the area.
And this is our first evacuation, and it's a learning experience for all of us.
Local crews have stepped up, working long hours with limited resources.
It could be a day of clearing trail going into an access area before we can actively fight the fire.
That's Devin Jackson, a captain with the Gillies Volunteer Fire Department outside Thunder Bay. His team, Anthony Anakisics, are among several receiving equipment from Canadian charity Global Medic. This includes portable tanks that can turn pickup trucks into mini pumper trucks and larger mobile pumping units. Nianakisik says he hopes wildfire evacuees can return home soon and that communities like his will be better prepared for emergencies in the future. Sarah Law, CBC News, Thunder Bay, Ontario.
Calgary police are refocusing their search for a missing 11-year-old boy with autism. Parker was last seen in Calgary's Thorncliffe neighborhood nearly 2 weeks ago. But as the CBC's Ina Sidhu reports, there is still hope of finding him.
Parker, in many ways, has become one of us, and we won't stop looking to bring him home.
Despite an extensive search covering 8,600 kilometers, there is still no sign of Parker. The 11-year-old has autism and is nonverbal. He was last seen on July 16th walking without a shirt and wearing black noise-canceling headphones. Calgary Police Chief Katie McLellan says the service is committed to finding him, but their approach is changing.
We will continue to follow up on tips, re-examine evidence, and pursue any new leads that emerge. If new information identifies an area requiring additional search activity, we are prepared and ready to respond.
Hundreds of officers and volunteers have been searching for Parker on the ground, by air, in bodies of water, and by knocking on doors. People have been asked to check backyards, sheds, garages, anywhere a child could hide. Acting Staff Sergeant Scott Gutterson says they don't suspect foul play.
It is our sincerest hope that Parker is still alive. But realistically, every day that goes by makes that hope less likely. So we continue to ask the public for help.
Parker's disappearance has gripped the city. Police say they're thankful the community has come together to help search and share photos to help bring Parker home. Ina Sidhu, CBC News, Calgary.
And in BC, hundreds of wildfire evacuees from the province's Caribou region are gathering in Kamloops. The fires forced them out of their homes Monday, and as the CBC's Shelley Joyce reports, the threat of wildfire continues.
I'm having a pretty zen day, realizing that what I left behind is only stuff.
Sally Watson has lived in the town of 70 Mile House for almost 40 years. She got the order to evacuate on the weekend, but she says some of her neighbors aren't leaving.
There are people who are ultimately prepared and other people who are going, I have no idea what I'm going to do, but I'm going to stay here as long as I possibly can.
Fires are not new to this area. Residents have become stoic over time, but this fire is showing no sign of letting up. Mark Patterson lives at Pear Lake, where the wildfire has been wreaking havoc. Before fleeing to Kamloops, he spent days putting out spot fires around his home and neighbors' cabins.
I had to protect my house. And now I'm arrived here, and I'm going to go have the greatest sleep.
For the evacuees in Kamloops, there's no telling when they'll be allowed home. Shelley Joyce, CBC News, Kamloops.
Toronto's mayor says she wants the land expropriated by the province to expand a city airport. Olivia Chow says now that the plan for Toronto's Billy Bishop Airport has been stopped by the federal government, the province should return the property. CBC's Sean Jeffords has the story.
Message to our provincial friends, please give us the park back.
A request by Toronto Mayor Olivia Chow over the weekend, now an urgent motion before City Council. Chow is asking councillors to back her demand that the province return land it wanted to expropriate to expand Billy Bishop Airport.
We would like our little Norway Park back, please.
In March, Premier Doug Ford announced a plan to expand the city's island airport. That would have allowed jets to use Billy Bishop and greatly increase its capacity. To do that, the province passed a bill to expropriate city lands. On Friday, the federal government rejected...
Sean Jeffords, and that is World Report. I'm Marcia Young.
Well, good morning, Manitoba. How you doing out there? How's your summer going so far? Great to be back with you after a couple weeks of staycay in our hot province. Heat warnings once again today in parts of Manitoba. I'm Marcy Marcusa. This is Information Radio. You're on 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app and YouTube here on CBC. 19 in Winnipeg right now. We've got some shallow fog up in Thompson and actually over in Portage as well. More on your forecast for your Tuesday morning coming up in a moment. Right now, let's talk about when the heat gets high. In Winnipeg, one housing advocate says we need better planning when those extreme temperatures hit for those who are unhoused in the city. So we'll find out more about her ask. Also this hour on the show, we're going to hear how Manitoba Hydro is defending plans to build a new natural gas turbines plural. More on the CEO who spoke yesterday in what is a rare appearance. And some of the music that you're hearing lately might have been made with AI. We're going to dig into why there's a push to label AI-made music and what that could mean for you if you're a music fan. Let's go to Heather Wells for more on these stories and more from our news center with headlines. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, Manitoba's government is keeping the Sturgeon Falls Trail in the Whiteshell closed for now. That path closed last week after two young brothers drowned in a wide set of rapids at the end of the trail. A provincial spokesperson says the trail will remain off limits to public pending changes to improve safety. We'll hear from Allison Baker-Thiessen. She co-owns Nudimic Lodge in that area and says that is the right decision. New housing developments in one southeast Manitoba community have some fearing it will make that small town feel of Ile-des-Chênes vanish. The Oak River Meadow development in Ile-des-Chênes is going to roughly add about 1,000 homes just 25 kilometers south of Winnipeg. The councillor for the arm of Richat in that area, Shane Pelche, says it's going to bump the population to about 4,000. The last census data shows the population of Ile-des-Chênes was about 1,500. We'll hear more coming up at 6:30.
Thank you, Heather.
Thank you.
All right, let's go to Abby Adeyemi, who's here with our forecast. How you doing, Abby?
Oh, great, Marcy. Nice to have you back.
Yeah, thank you. Nice to be here.
You look refreshed, actually.
I am refreshed. I slept so much. It was unbelievable, which for a morning host is vacay. But I'll tell you what, it pretty much was hot the entire 2 weeks I was away here.
Yeah, and it continues. Now it's even, we took that break and now it's back again. We have this heat warning, just part of southern Manitoba yesterday, but now it's the whole of southern Manitoba. Heat dominates most of the regions and into the central parts of the province today, with afternoon temperatures climbing into the upper 20s and even close to the lower 30s, with the humidic values close to the 40s. Here in the Red River Valley region for today, we're starting the day at 20 degrees. Some sunny conditions outside. Expect the sunshine to give way to a mix of sun and clouds. There's a slim chance of showers, maybe some thunderstorms and mix sometime this afternoon as we head to our daily high of 31. But the humidex, Marcy, it's going to be around 40. And of course, the UV, it's going to be 8+. So you need to take it easy if you're out there. Similar conditions we're seeing across southern Manitoba. Most of the regions waking up close to 18 degrees this morning, and we'll see highs in the 31s. And of course, the humidex values around 41. But up north, we're looking at 10s to 19s with highs around 29 and the humidex around 46. So it's more about the hot, humid summer is here for most of the province, and for the city we do have that heat warning for us, and of course a risk of afternoon showers. But right now it's 20 degrees. We have sunshine outside. We're aiming for 31 today.
You guys, I went to plant bingo when I was off.
Plan B.
You can win plants. A whole bunch of different businesses across Manitoba are getting into this. We did an interview about it, but I did not win plants. But I had so much fun. You're in the middle of the greenhouse, and I don't know. It's just this. I get it. It's
fun as long as I'm just within the greenhouse, and even if I don't win anything, I'm gonna win the fact that I'm there.
I know. You got to go with me next time, Abby.
I will.
Yeah.
Is it bingo or is it PLANT? Like under the P.
Oh, that's smart. No, it's bingo.
Oh, okay.
Then you'd have to yell plant.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be the same.
No, I think that'd be great.
Plant. No,
Plant.
it doesn't
I
sound
want a
the
plant.
You're fair enough. You can pitch that to the various businesses. Corey Funk.
Oh.
Okay, before we're done with this, next hour I'm going to congratulate you on air about your race because it involves a lot of Manitobans.
Oh, yes.
But I'll hold that thought because we need to get into the morning commute. Just remind people where to call us.
Yeah, a very quiet commute so far, but if you do see that number to call if you're walking, biking, driving, 204-788-3093.
All right. So as Abby mentioned, today we do have those yellow level heat warnings for much of Manitoba. In the north, 28 to 30 degrees is what we're looking for. Across southern and central Manitoba, daytime values with humidex could reach 39. So this is obviously a huge concern, especially if people are unhoused in this extreme heat. In the afternoon when the sun's beating down on you, it takes its toll. Now, CBC's Faith Fundell had a conversation about the heat with Marion Willis, who's the executive director at St. Boniface Street Links, and she has some concerns. Marion is an outreach works with her outreach organization, and their clients and their residents are people who need housing.
Well, it's really too hot for anybody out there, and it's actually dangerous for people that are out there struggling with addiction and homelessness and, experiencing maybe some of the more severe effects of having consumed fentanyl.
Have you seen any close calls in terms of emergencies out there, whether heat-related or other?
Can't say I've seen close calls, but I mean, we're still stepping over people in some places to administer Narcan, right? So, for that particular population that are people that are out there, this weather is extremely dangerous because these are folks that are not going to get up and make their way to a cooling center. And I don't know, I'm just really thinking a lot about how we address homelessness in the city. You know, I think homelessness has really changed in terms of its demographics and some of the challenges out there. And I really, really think that as a city, we could do a whole lot better. I really think it's time to consider, you know, managed encampment communities that create spaces that people, you know, that we can move people to where people can be and receive services. You know, maybe they're not getting housed right away. Maybe there are people that want to remain outside. But I mean, just leaving people where they are on the streets and thinking they're going to access cooling centers or that things are going to get better. It's just not, doesn't work that way.
Yeah, the city does have a community center set up for heat relief in addition to those hydration stations.
Well, that's good for the people that can access those places, but not everybody can and not everybody will.
And so talk about that. What are the options then, if not that?
Well, there are none, right? Like, seriously, I drove by a particular area and wondered whether paramedics should be called, you know, because some of the people that are nodded off and bent over and nodded off or down, they're still breathing. It's not an overdose situation where you would call 911, but those are people that are in no state of mind to understand that, you know, they're outside. This is extreme heat. They could, you know, end up with sunstroke, with heat exhaustion. It's just not good, you know, that we even
I wonder
have these conversations.
What in the end did you do? What did you choose to do?
We stopped, of course, and checked to make sure that the person was breathing.
Did you end up calling 911?
We did not. No, we left a team with them. And I don't know what the outcome was because I'm not there, and the team's not back yet.
Well, what have your folks been doing in your organization to help folks?
Well, we've been handing out ice water, handing out popsicles, going into some of the encampments that we're aware of, making sure that people in there have hydration. We're providing popsicles because it provides, you know, there's sugar and it provides, it's not nutritious, but it, you know, kind of meets a need that people have. That's all we can really do. There's really no place to take people to. None of the people that Outreach has spoken to, although I have to say, Faith, like, I haven't actually read today's Outreach report fully. They're not back yet. So I don't know whether any people accepted rides to cooling centers. I don't, but I doubt it. You know, we have to find a way to work with people where they are. And I just really think that, we could do a whole lot better. You know, I'm not going to stop talking about the need for there to be, for the city to designate areas within the city and make those, you know, managed encampment communities, you know, so that services can be on site and people can be properly cared for and planned for. And I think that, you know, we need to have an all-encompassing strategy to address homelessness. And Homelessness Winnipeg has done a fantastic job, you know, of planning for extreme weather, and they always do. But, you know, it's July. We're getting through this. The snow will be flying, and we'll all be trying to figure out what we're going to do when the extreme weather is snow and really cold weather, and we have all of these people outside on the street and in encampments scattered everywhere. It's really, really difficult to even get to people, you know, to check on them and find out how they're doing and what they need.
So that was the CBC's Faith Fundal, who was working on all the shows, in fact, yesterday, hosting. Speaking with Marion Willis in the afternoon yesterday. Marion's the executive director of St. Boniface Street Links. Now, Marion raised some concerns there about the ability of people to access cooling centers in the city. You heard her answer, you know, they're great maybe if you can get to them. Not everyone can. We'll follow up with the city at later today, so you can check back with us here at CBC News.
How do you listen to your favorite Manitoba shows when you're on the move? Get your daily dose of information radio, Radio Noon, and Up to Speed, live and on demand. Just open the CBC News app, tap the local drop-down, and hit play. It's the easiest way to keep our province at your fingertips. Download the CBC News app today.
Okay, that's a really important thing. We get asked all the time where people can hear things live, and that is the easiest way. Just grab that app, go to local, drop down, and there you are. Maybe that's how you're listening right now. I'm Marcy Marcusa with our team here at the show. Information Radio is the morning show here at CBC Manitoba, and it's 19, partly cloudy in the city. Over in Brandon, in your city, it's clear and 16, and up in the city of Thompson, some shallow fog this morning and 13 degrees as we once again get ready for a hot day. Well, turn up your radio just a little bit because we want you to lean into what you're about to hear. See if you notice anything unusual with this song.
Dust on the wind, boots on the ground, smoke in the sky, no peace found. Rivers run red, the drums roll slow. Tell me, brother.
So we're listening to Dust on the Wind by a quote-unquote band called Velvet Sundown. The thing is, they are an AI-generated group. Now, music like this is becoming more a part of what we're exposed to, whether we realize that or not. And now the industry is calling for labels on AI-made music so listeners know how their songs were created. Kevin Ramdas is here to talk about it, professor of technology at Humber Polytech and founder of Latinum. Latinum.ca that makes Canadian sovereign AI agents. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Marcy.
So what do you make of this push for labels on AI-generated songs?
Well, I mean, it's inevitable. Like right now, when we look at AI, when we look at music, we've got different types of music, and AI is being part of that entire process. So it's not going to be banned from music in any sort of sense, and it's almost treated as another instrument.
Why has this become such a big focus now?
Well, partially, when we look at the way that artists are paid for their music, a lot of their money comes from streaming revenue. And so when we look at the streaming giants, what they do is they put aside a pot of money for payouts, and that pot gets divided by who gets played. And so real artists are getting paid out of the same pot as AI-generated artists or AI-generated music. And so that's diluting the pot.
Do you think labels would make a difference to draw attention to the things that you're talking about? Which are the concerns?
I think labeling is the first step in the solution. So overall, this is about money, and it is about attribution and paying people who produce music and put in the actual work. And so, so when we look at labeling, labeling will be our first step, and that's where we're going to right now.
I guess based on that, there is this statistic that backs that up, that it would make a difference. A study by music data company Luminate found 42% of listeners were less interested in a song once they learned AI was involved. So I guess by that number, at least it would have some type of an impact. How do you decide, though, what should be labeled AI generated versus simply AI assisted? Because as you said, you started by talking about this being part of a lot of music AI.
Yeah, so I mean, there's an actual industry standard that just recently came out, I think about 2 weeks ago, where there are two labels, AI generated and AI assisted. And AI generated essentially means that the entire song, the vocals, the core music is all generated using AI prompts. As opposed to AI assisted, there's still a human doing the essential creative work of making the music using AI as a tool. It gets a little bit complicated in there because when we talk about AI assisted, when we look at the way music is made, it gets made in stages, and it gets made in layers. So, for example, you write the lyrics, you create the vocals, you have the instrumentals, you mix it together, then you master it, and then each one of those different phases can be AI done entirely using AI, or it can be used as an AI tool, so that the extent of AI in each one of those levels varies.
In a way, maybe we need a new measurement system then. Like we have a CanCon measurement system. This is in the weeds maybe for some listeners, but we have a way to actually identify if we're going to label something Canadian content, right? So that
Right.
involves, how many people are involved in the project and at which stage. And 75%, I think, has to be Canadian made to be considered a Canadian product. I'm just wondering whether or not, if the drums are AI generated, but the voice is a real person and the guitar is a real person, like could we see a future like that where we're actually assessing how much is human made?
Yeah, so SOCAN just partnered with a Canadian company called Musical AI, and the technology estimates how much of that finished track or of that music gets traced back to particular real songs. There's small issues with it because when you're building a song, it's kind of like baking a cake. And you have eggs in it. Which eggs are being used in the cake at this part of the cake? It's almost impossible to tell once it's all mixed together.
So you'd have to be involved at the beginning of the process. Who should be responsible, just to reiterate here, for disclosing AI use?
Well, currently as it stands, the person who posts the music, who uploads that track, has to disclose the AI generation. The problem is that it's voluntary and self-reported. And so for honest creators, that's okay. But when you're looking at those that are abusing the system or don't even know that they're abusing the system, they don't declare.
Thanks very much for getting into this with us. I appreciate having you on with us this morning. And anything you'd like to add, just given that there's probably things that I don't understand about this that you'll be able to offer us?
Well, yeah. I mean, overall, I do a lot of work with AI, and the thing that I find is that the people who get the best outputs with AI are generally professionals in that field. So then, when we look at music and the music industry, it will be musicians and people who understand music that are controlling AI that get the best outputs out of it. And so there's still a need for human in the process when we come to AI. And a lot of it still sits upon our knowledge. And hopefully we don't get lost in that part of it.
All right, Kevin, thank you very much for your time.
All right. Thank you very much, Marcy.
Kevin Ramdas is a professor of technology at Humber Polytechnic and founder of Latna.ca. They make Canadian sovereign AI agents. And with us this morning to talk about AI-generated music. It is coming up to 6:30. We have Business Digest coming up, so we'll go over some of the day's top stories, so stay tuned for that. Also, in the next half hour of the program, we're going to hear more from Manitoba Hydro, defending plans to build new natural gas turbines. And then at 10 to 7 this morning, we'll touch base with what is happening in Ottawa as we bring you Ottawa Report with Ryan Tumulty to look at the politics of midsummer and what's going on in Ottawa. In traffic, it's been pretty good so far. Just check before you hit the highways this morning, obviously for construction zones and things like that in your way. Before you head out on your summer road trip and you're frustrated, there's lots of highways to pick instead. But you can always call Corey if you see any problems on your bike, walk, or roll. The commuter line here is 204-788-3093. Your news is next.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg at 6:30, 19 degrees right now. We're going to skyrocket to 31 this afternoon, humidex of 40. And yes, that means again, we do have a heat warning for much of southern Manitoba and parts of central and northern Manitoba as well. Manitoba's government is keeping the Sturgeon Falls Trail in the Whiteshell closed for now. That path closed last week after two young brothers drowned in a wide set of rapids at the end of the trail. A provincial spokesperson says the trail will remain off limits to the public pending changes to improve safety. Alison Baker-Thiessen, who co-owns Nudimick Lodge in the area, says that is the right decision.
Going to save so many lives, and that's another important piece, is that we don't want to see any more families go through what any of these families have already experienced.
At least 3 children and a woman have drowned in that area since 2023. Baker-Thiessen says the trail ends on slippery rocks near the rapid shore. She'd like to see a barrier to stop those using the path from getting close to the water. A Manitoba business says a 50% tariff on Canadian exports would be a serious hit to its bottom line. John McLaughlin is Vice President of Operations at Foam Pack, a Winnipeg company that makes products like floor underlay and packaging. As U.S. President Donald Trump ramps up his trade war against Canada, threatening to implement tariffs, McLaughlin says his business wouldn't be able to absorb the added costs.
The tariff at a 50% rate pretty much eliminates our ability to be competitive in the U.S. markets. It's already a competitive industry, and it's not an option to increase our prices by 50%. We will just lose those customers or accounts.
Trump threatens 50% tariffs on a variety of Canadian exports starting next month. McLaughlin says if those tariffs drive up costs, Foam Pack would have to look at moving its manufacturing to the U.S. or downsizing or even closing down. He says all the scenarios would come with job losses. A former NDP cabinet minister responsible for Manitoba Hydro says he is disappointed his successors haven't pushed the Crown Corporation to create more wind farms. Tim Sale was energy minister from 2002 to 2004. He pushed to create the wind farm in St. Leon. Sale says he is disappointed Manitoba only has 2 wind farms, while other provinces have many more.
I do know in Quebec that they simply give direction to their hydro corporation. For some reason, our governments have not been willing to put it down on paper and say, this is what you will do. And you will do it now, not 3 years from now, not when there's a government going to change. You're going to do it now.
Manitoba Hydro plans to partner with Indigenous-led companies to create 600 megawatts of wind power. Sale thinks Hydro needs more. Manitoba's only supervised drug consumption site will fully open August 11th. That is according to the province. A spokesperson tells CBC News Aboriginal Health and Wellness, which will operate the site on Henry Street, has more training lined up for staff. The spokesperson says once it's open, the site will operate Tuesdays to Saturdays from 11 in the morning until 6:45 at night. Wars in Ukraine and the Middle East will be the spotlight in Washington today. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky being greeted at Joint Base Andrews. He will meet with U.S. President Donald Trump. Zelensky says anti-ballistic defense is one of his key priorities in his country's defense against Russia. Now, Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is also in Washington to meet with the U.S. president. The two are expected to discuss the war in Iran and the ongoing conflict in Gaza. Zelensky and Netanyahu will join Trump for the funeral of Senator Lindsey Graham later today. The longtime Republican senator died unexpectedly on July 11th. In one of his final official acts, Graham visited Kyiv, securing sanctions on countries purchasing Russian exports. You can hear the latest national and international news coming up on World Report at 7. New housing developments in a southeast Manitoba community have some fearing it's going to make that small town feel vanish. The Oak River Meadow development in Ile-des-Chênes will add about 1,000 homes, 25 kilometers south of Winnipeg. Richot councillor Shane Pelche says that's going to bump the population to about 4,000.
If you live and breathe like you're in a small town, then that's the feeling you're going to get. And I hope to see that continue with any new resident that comes on board.
Now, census data shows the population of Ile-des-Chênes was about 1,500 in 2021, so this would more than double it. Pelche says water and sewer capacity won't be an issue as that infrastructure is being built into the development. You can find the latest news updated throughout the morning. All you have to do is head to cbc.ca/Manitoba.
When I think of Ile-des-Chênes, I think about baseball. There's so, I don't know why. I think there's fields out there, and it's just a place where a lot of people have gone to play ball.
I've gone there.
Years.
I've gone to see my nephew play there.
See, I know. It's just, yeah. That's going to be a huge change, though. I mean, by the numbers.
It is more than double.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. All right. Thank you, Heather.
Thank you.
Well, if you are playing ball today and you are outside, you need to be very careful. We have another really hot one on the way. Let's get into our regional forecast. 6:36 a.m. on Tuesday morning, Abby.
Yeah, Maris, it's not even 7 yet, and we're already seeing temperatures crossing into the 20s in some regions already. That heat warning remains the big story today across the province, the entire southern Manitoba. We have this heat warning extended into the central parts of the province. This will impact the Park Flin Flon towards Norway House. We're seeing afternoon temperatures reaching upper 20s and even lower 30s today, with the humidex climbing close to 41 in most of the region. So you need to take it easy out there. Winnipeg, right now, we're seeing temperatures close to 20 degrees. Sunrise in the sky. Sunshine is going to give way to a mix of sun and clouds later. We do have a 30% chance of afternoon showers, along with a risk of thunderstorms. And our highs for the city will be getting close to 31, with a humidity around 40. So, and that UV index is on the high side, 8+. So you need to take it easy. Across the Pembina Valley region, we're seeing 18 degrees and a high of 31, with a humidex close to 41. It's going to be hazy at some point there. We go to the Westman region, we're seeing 16 degrees there, climbing to 31. In the Parkland region, 18, climbing to 31. While for the Interlake region, we're looking at 15s and 16 degrees. Highs will be around 31, with a humidex in the range of the 40s there also. Crossing into the central part, the Park Flin Flon, we're looking at 19 there. We're seeing 16 around the Norway House area. Heat warnings covering that part of the province. Then other regions up north, we're talking about more of our scattered rain showers. Thompson starts the day at 10 with foggy conditions. Those foggy conditions extend towards Lynn Lake this morning at 13. We'll see highs close to 26 degrees there. And then far north, Gillam is at 11. Tudula Lake is at 17. Most of the regions there will get to 26, while for Churchill, we're seeing 15 degrees there. We only see 18 as the high later this afternoon. So overall, it's going to be hot and humid across southern Manitoba, while the northern parts will warm up gradually, and we may see a few afternoon showers. Winnipeg right now, let's just put it around 20 degrees, and we'll get to 31 today.
On Sunday morning, Abby, early morning, I was driving to a golf game and looking at the sun come up. It was just a glowing orange, scary ball because of the smoke coming from from other provinces largely now. But it was just crazy. I haven't quite seen it like that. But obviously, we've had such extreme weather globally, and obviously here in Manitoba and across Canada. It was really something. Yeah, but it's beautiful in its intensity as well.
True. It's just something you just want to oh.
And then you go,
there.
oh.
And then you go, oh, exactly.
Yeah.
You go,
that's not normal.
It's the sun. Oh, the smoke is blocking it.
Totally. All right, let's get into the morning commute. Corey, what's blocking our way in there?
The only issue that I know of right now is northbound Lajimodiere at Headmaster. There's a stalled semi on the shoulder, so might kind of knock off a little bit of your right-hand lane there, so just heads up with that. Other than that, it's been pretty smooth overall, but if you're walking, you're biking, you drive, and you see some, you can give me a call on the CBC commuter line. That number, 204-788-3093.
It's time now on CBC for the Business Digest with Megan Reid.
Good morning. According to the Bank of Canada's latest market participants survey, U.S. President Donald Trump's trade tensions are the number one risk to the Canadian economy. The central bank asked those in the know, we're talking bankers, asset managers, pension funds, and the like, what they think are the big downside risks to Canada's economic growth. 96% put U.S. trade as the number one problem. Coming in second, the tightening of global financial conditions, with increasing geopolitical tensions coming in third. One caveat with the central bank's survey is it was conducted several weeks before the U.S. announced that it would not be renewing CUSMA, and more than a month before President Trump announced a 50% tariff on roughly $20 billion worth of Canadian goods, which goes into effect August 19th. In other news, you might want to check your snack drawer. The Canadian Food Inspection Agency is recalling the Cadbury Dairy Milk Oreo candy bar, sold individually or in packs of 12, after it was discovered it may contain pistachios, which is not written on the label. Officials say that it's dangerous for people who are allergic or sensitive to nuts and could cause a serious or life-threatening reaction. The CFIA says anybody who bought the chocolate bars should either throw them out or return them to the store where they were purchased for a refund. Turning to retail, Shein has hit a fairly large bump in its road to going public. The fast fashion company, headquartered in Singapore but founded in China, was looking to launch an IPO worth roughly $40 billion sometime this year. Unfortunately, the retailer reported a net loss of $99 million in its latest quarter. It's blaming most of that on the removal of the Americans' de minimis duty policy, which used to allow shipments under $800 to enter the U.S. duty-free. Despite the setback, retail expert Lisa Amlani thinks Shein will be A-OK, as its superpower is its speed to take a product from an idea to reality. Amlani points out that traditional brands like Gap, Lululemon, and Aritzia take at least a year.
Shein does that in less than a month. That's less than the time it takes for Zara and H&M, other fast fashion brands, to go from concept to market. So the fact that Shein can really monopolize what is trending and what the customer wants, that's what's going to keep them from, I guess, bankruptcy.
Amlani is not wrong. Shein had 281 million active users in its latest quarter, who placed a total of more than 1 billion orders. And finally, call them book baristas, reading sommeliers, or shop assistants. Personalized recommendations from actual human beings are doing much of the heavy lifting when it comes to independent booksellers. Seems consumers, bombarded by social media algorithms, are craving human interaction. Jessica Walker, co-owner of Monroe's Books in Victoria, who's been in the business for more than 40 years, says recommending titles is her favorite part of the job.
It is like the hallmark of independent retail and independent restaurants and, businesses is that personal curation. It's taking a stand for what you sell. It's not something that supplier has paid for placement or anything like that. So I think there is that kind of genuine connection.
Walker notes that she's seen an increase in repeat customers asking what else her staff members recommend. For CBC Radio, I'm Megan Reed.
6:43 a.m. It is Tuesday, July 28th. Great to be back with you. I'm Marcy Marcusa, and this is CBC's Information Radio. Well, next on the show, you might have heard this yesterday. In a rare appearance, Manitoba Hydro's CEO was speaking to defend a plan to build 3 new natural gas turbines. He went on the defense yesterday on the first day of public hearings into their plan to avoid potential power shortages in this province. Now, it was the first day of 6 weeks of scheduled hearings into Hydro's Integrated Resource Plan, or IRP. Alan Danroth is the CEO of Manitoba Hydro. This is the first time the board has looked into Hydro's infrastructure plans. CBC's Bartley Kivas has been covering this, and here's Danroth speaking before the Public Utilities Board.
The facts are that Manitoba has one of the greenest grids in Canada, and on average, the second lowest rates in the country. The proposed addition of 3 combustion turbines in Brandon is absolutely necessary to ensure we can meet the demands of our customers over the next decade and will have virtually no impact on Manitoba's greenhouse gas emissions. 99.8% of Manitoba Hydro's generation will continue to be from non-fossil fuel sources through to 2035. Despite the addition of both the Squatum and Kias generating stations to our system over the past 14 years, which added almost 900 megawatts of generating capacity, we are simply not the energy superpower many think we are. Demand for our reliable, affordable electricity continues to grow, and like any hydroelectric utility, we remain susceptible to the impact of drought and low water, which we've experienced in 4 of the last 5 years. As a result of low water conditions over this past year, Manitoba Hydro was a net importer of power for the first time in recent memory. We imported 5.9 terawatt hours of electricity versus exporting 4.8 terawatt hours. That capacity and energy we imported was purchased from the same wholesale markets we export to. For decades, Manitoba Hydro has always planned to meet Manitobans' energy needs, even during the worst droughts on record, and we continue to do so. Energy imports have always been part of the plan. What we imported this past winter was roughly the equivalent of the output of Kias generating station every hour, every day, for 30 days. All of this is to say, if anybody in this room thinks we do not need additional power sources urgently, you are grossly misinformed. When we import electricity to keep the lights on and power your EV and heat your home with electricity, as we did this past January, it is likely we are importing energy generated from fossil fuel, either coal or natural gas. So you can see why adding gas-fired generation that will make a small shift in our overall energy portfolio is not something anyone should get too wound up over if you truly care about the environment and truly are the self-avowed expert you claim to be in media story after media story. When it comes to dispatchable power, available when you need it in bulk, the only viable technology currently available in the timeline we need it are gas turbines, which cause many in this room great angst. So we have many misinformed people spouting rhetoric in the media that don't fully understand our system and how it works. Many claim we failed to consult. I can tell you nothing could be further from the truth. We followed the International Association of Public Participation's Pillars for Effective Engagement. We had 125,500 survey responses, 50 interview and survey participants from large industrial customers, municipalities, and Indigenous nations, 9 workshops or information sessions for interested parties, and 7 meetings with our technical advisory group. Manitoba Hydro welcomes public review of our plans. We believe our IRP and proposed development plan offers the best solution to meet Manitoba's energy needs going forward, based on research engineering and hundreds of years of collective engineering expertise. Manitoba Hydro is currently managing 8 credible threats against our employees, 5 of them directed at me personally. More troubling is that these threats are increasingly affecting our frontline workforce. In the last year, my employees have been threatened with weapons, including guns, while performing their duties. And in one recent incident, a homeowner directed his dogs to attack one of our meter readers. The safety and security of our employees is non-negotiable. They deserve to perform their duties without fear of intimidation, harassment, or violence. Unfortunately, inaccurate statements and misinformation contribute directly to the hostilities our employees encounter in the field. When individuals without expertise spread misinformation about Manitoba Hydro's operations, programs, or intentions, it can erode public trust, inflame tensions, and create real-world safety risks for the people serving Manitobans every day. Facts matter. The information presented in these proceedings must be accurate, evidence-based, and responsible, because the consequences of misinformation are being borne by our employees on the front lines. Ongoing misinformation in the public eye, despite our best efforts to counter them and provide our customers with accurate, factual information, also has another significant impact. It helps foster the continual aging of our infrastructure. This isn't a result of poor planning, bad engineering, or inefficiency, as some here would have you believe, but rather directly a result of underinvestment due to a lack of revenue. Our issue at Hydro is not an expense issue, it's a revenue issue, as presented previously in other hearings here.
So a lot to try to understand there about what was said yesterday from Manitoba Hydro's CEO, Alan Danroth. He was speaking at the Public Utilities Board, where they're holding public hearings right now into plan to build new natural gas turbines. Now, those hearings into Hydro's plans, as I mentioned, are the first of its kind, of their kind. The board has never investigated Hydro's plans before in this way. So for more on the story and the hearings, please check out our reporting at cbc.ca/Manitoba.
Manitoba is a conversation that never stops. From your first coffee with information radio to the midday pulse of Radio Noon and the drive home with Up to Speed. Don't let your day get in the way of your favorite shows. Just open the CBC News app, tap the local drop-down, and hit play. Bring your community with you. Download the CBC News app and stay live with us.
It is 10 to 7 on your Tuesday morning, and next on the show, there's 3 summer by-elections that could shake up the seat count in the House of Commons. So there's ridings in Ontario, Quebec, and BC that go to the polls on August 31st, people in those ridings. 4 more will need to be called, though, before the end of the year, because some MPs are set to resign. Now, for a closer look at the races and to try to do the math, we have Ryan Tumulty here, political reporter with the Toronto Star. Good morning, Ryan.
Good morning.
So how are these by-elections going to affect the balance of power in the House as it stands right now?
Yeah, the short answer is I think they probably won't. We have 3 ridings here. 2 are held by the Liberals. 1 is held by the Conservatives today. I think the Liberals are going to hold on to both of their ridings. I think it'd be a real upset if they don't. And then in the Conservative riding, I think that's going to be a really tight contest. Potentially could even give the Liberals another seat, strengthen that majority a little bit more. But I think at the end of this, we're still going to have a Liberal majority and potentially a slightly stronger one.
So what are the Conservatives going to be looking for or watching for in these races that would speak to them about their party and about their hopes moving forward then?
Yeah, I think for the Conservatives, what they're hoping to get out of this is a strong showing in North Vancouver, Capilano, the BC thing. I don't think they really expect to win that, but certainly a strong showing and a second place that keeps them competitive. And then I think they really want to win that Quebec riding they hold right now, Chicoutimi-Laforde. That riding became vacant because the MP, who's very well known, became a senator. The party's been through a lot over the last year between floor crossings and some of the internal party disputes that have sort of spilled out into the open in recent months. So I think, to show momentum, to show that they can still compete nationally, I think it's important for them to win that Quebec seat.
What can you tell us about the other by-elections that, as I mentioned, are going to be happening before the end of this year?
Yeah, so there's 4 that we know about. There's St. Hyacinthe-Bagot-Acton. That is a Quebec riding. I'm actually really surprised the Prime Minister didn't call it alongside these 3 because it has been vacant for just as long. It has been vacant for just as long as North Vancouver and longer than Beaches or Chicoutimi have been vacant. So very interesting that he didn't call that one as well, but he will have to before the end of the year. And then there's 3 more where the MPs have said they're going to resign but haven't done so yet. So 2 of them are in Montreal. Alexander Bouleris, the NDP MP, has said he's going to step down from his riding. Stephen Guilbeault, the Liberal MP, of course, famously has resigned from his party, has resigned his seat, but actually hasn't formally stepped down just yet. We expect him to do that next month. And then Kathy Wagenthal, who's a Saskatchewan Conservative MP, Yorktown, she has said she's going to resign on August 31st. So, it's a bit more change. The Prime Minister will have 6 months after those MPs formally step down to actually call those races. But I think we'll be expecting them, probably this fall rather than waiting all the way to next year.
And Avi Lewis, the NDP leader, still not throwing his hat in the ring and in the running for any seat, right?
Yeah, no. I mean, he has said that his focus right now is rebuilding the party, the party's infrastructure. Obviously, it's fundraising, very important to them right now. Recruiting candidates for the next campaign, but I wouldn't be surprised if we don't see Mr. Lewis run anytime before the general election. He might wait that long before looking for a seat. He's sort of hinted that I think he's likely to run in the Vancouver area. That's where he's run before federally. So yeah, I'm not sure that we should expect him to be part of any of these coming by-elections.
All right, Ryan, thank you very much for this. Nice to see you.
All right, thank you.
That's Ryan Tumulty, a political reporter with the Toronto Star.
Local news is in decline across Canada, and this is bad news for all of us. With less local news, noise, rumors, and misinformation fill the void, and it gets harder to separate truth from fiction. That's why CBC News is putting more journalists in more places across Canada, reporting on the ground from where you live, telling the stories that matter to all of us. Because local news is big news. Choose news, not noise. CBC News.
Feel that? That's the thrill of the Northern Super League. And it's back on CBC Gem, with 6 fierce clubs battling all season long for glory. From coast to coast, Canada's first professional women's soccer league is bringing the heat. For the fans who live for the roar of the crowd, the last-minute winner, and the moments that make sports unforgettable, this is your season. Watch the Northern Super League all season on CBC Gem.
You're with Information Radio here on CBC. I'm Marcy Marcus on 89.3. It's 4 minutes to 7 o'clock, and World Report's coming up at the top of the clock, and then more local news. The Canadian Blood Services Agency says they've seen a significant drop in blood donations in the last 2 months in this country. We're going to talk to the organization locally about why fewer people have been donating blood and whether or not that's actually the case here in Manitoba as well by the stats, so stay tuned. Also, the Living Prairie Museum is celebrating its 50th anniversary. Coming up, we're going to talk to the museum's curator about its history and how they're celebrating the milestones. That'll be a lovely interview coming up. And speaking of curating museum exhibits, we have a follow-up on an interview we had yesterday with Gail Asper, philanthropist who says her family is pausing financial support to the Canadian Museum for Human Rights over a Palestinian exhibit. Now, as you heard on the show yesterday, Gail Asper is calling for a review of the museum's curation process. We're going to talk to a scholar in museum studies about the standard of curatorial freedom when it comes to the creation of museum exhibits in the next hour of the show against that interview. So stay tuned. That is all coming up here on Information Radio. Right now, let's talk about what's happening in the weather forecast. It's partly cloudy. It's 19 degrees in Winnipeg. Our high today is going to be 31 with humidex. It'll feel like 40, so another sticky one to say the least. We have sun and cloud this morning, but this afternoon we in fact could see a thunderstorm, so we have a risk of that with this heat. We also have heat warnings that extend across southern and into central Manitoba and up in the north for the Paw, Flin Flon, Norway House, Clearwater, and Roboden. All right, let's get to what's happening with Heather Wells in our news headlines. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, Manitoba's only supervised drug consumption site will fully open on August 11th. That is according to the province. A spokesperson telling CBC News Aboriginal Health and Wellness, which will operate the site on 366 Henry, has lined up more training for staff. New housing developments in a southeast Manitoba town have some fearing it will make that small town feeling vanish. The Oak River Meadow development in Ile-des-Chênes will add roughly 1,000 homes to the town south of Winnipeg, which will take it to about 4,000, more than doubling the population. So we'll hear more in our next local news at 7:30.
All right, thanks very much. Well, Heather's been mentioning in the news that story about what had happened with the two brothers who died at Sturgeon Falls. And we do expect to hear, she said, from the province later today. But we on the show coming up after 8 o'clock, I just want to mention this. I know it's a ways away, but after 8, we're going to talk to Laura Ricard. Now, Laura is a professor of communications over at University of Maine who has studied risk mitigation at parks all across the United States who have been in similar situations to some of the issues that we've had here around our waterways. So we're going to hear more about how they manage safety, and that is coming up still as well on Information Radio. Stay with us, though, because World Report at 7 is next. It's 1 minute to.
Today on The Current.
What if you got a call from the school and they said, "We want your child only to come for a part day"?
I'm Rebecca Zandbergen. The Manitoba government gives support to disabled children, but when they turn 18, much of that help dries up. We'll speak to two people affected about how to fix this and why the system needs an overhaul, coming up on The Current.
The Current, this morning at 8:37, 9:07 in Newfoundland, and on the CBC Listen app.
This is World Report. Good morning. I'm Marcia Young. High-stakes meetings are happening in Washington today, but it will also be a day for dignitaries to honor a former colleague. The leaders of Ukraine and Israel will sit down for one-on-one talks with U.S. President Donald Trump. The leaders will also be attending the funeral of Senator Lindsey Graham. Graham was a defender of Ukraine in its fight against Russia. But the crisis in the Middle East will be top of mind, with officials gathering to recognize Graham's life and career. Reporter Kate Fisher joins me now from Washington. And Kate, what are we expecting from this meeting between Zelensky and Trump?
Well, in terms of what we expect from the meeting with President Zelensky, well, they haven't always gone that well, these meetings in the Oval Office. As you may remember, a famous one where Donald Trump got very frustrated with the Ukrainian leader. However, this time the tide seems to have turned somewhat, and certainly the language between the two has been much softer and much more friendly. And I think that President Zelensky will be trying to maximize on this, and perhaps, the fact that he's here to pay respects to Lindsey Graham, a big friend and political ally of Donald Trump. He'll be hoping that perhaps there is more sympathy shown by the American president. And of course, earlier this month at the NATO summit, Donald Trump agreed to allow Ukraine to produce its own Patriot interceptor missiles, this air defense system that is so vital to Ukraine. And I think, President Zelensky is going to be trying to maximize on that, try to get more support from the US, and perhaps try and push peace talks with Russia to try to find an end to this conflict.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu will also be at the White House. How important is this meeting?
Well, it's really important, particularly for Benjamin Netanyahu, who is facing an election this year in Israel and knows that his relationship with Donald Trump is a little bit more tricky than it has been in the past. Donald Trump has become increasingly frustrated with Mr. Netanyahu, and Benjamin Netanyahu is going to be trying to get things back on track with the US president, not just because he wants to see a return to full-scale war with Iran, something that Donald Trump seemingly is not wanting to do right now. He seems to be favoring the diplomatic resolution. He also wants to show that he still has this great, strong relationship with Donald Trump because it serves him well domestically back in Israel. Donald Trump, however, also knows he has midterm elections coming up in the US in the autumn, and he knows that this war is currently really unpopular with the American people. So there's going to be those differences to overcome in their meeting.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Marcia.
Reporter Kate Fisher in Washington. Johnson & Johnson has agreed to pay an estimated $5.5 billion to settle lawsuits over its baby powder. The product contains talcum powder, and it's alleged to cause ovarian cancer. The company's vice president of litigation called the claims meritless and says Johnson & Johnson was willing to settle for closure. For the long-running legal battle, it covers 76,000 claims. And while Johnson & Johnson has denied that its talc-based products cause cancer, it has since changed the formula of its baby powder. Crews battling wildfires in France and Spain will also be fighting the weather. Another heat wave will bring drier conditions and higher winds. More than 300,000 people in both countries have been forced from their homes. Journalist William Denslow visited an evacuation center in Bordeaux, France.
The wait for answers continues. Over 1,000 people, along with their pets, spent another night here at the Bordeaux Exhibition Centre after being forced to evacuate their homes. Many questioning when or if they'll be able to return home. The site is transforming. Over the weekend, it was a place to sleep and have a meal. Now there are legal and medical services, along with a growing volume of donations. A sign that, for some, the prospect of a quick return home seems unlikely. More than 40,000 hectares of land have burned in the region's wildfires, and the blazes remain less than 15 kilometres from Bordeaux. For a second straight night, the fires were held in check. Roughly 100 kilometres of trees have been cleared as authorities seek to create line breaks and remove the fuel that sustained this fire for days. Containment efforts appear to be working, but temperatures are rising. Parts of France could soar above 40 degrees Celsius this week. The hotter weather is expected to complicate firefighting efforts, a battle, officials say, that could be waged for months. William Denslow for CBC News, Bordeaux.
At least 50 people have been injured by an earthquake in Japan. A 7.1 magnitude quake rattled the southern island of Kyushu today. A roof cam in Kumamoto City captures the moment the quake struck. There are reports of damage to roads and bridges. A dozen buildings have collapsed. Officials are warning of possible aftershocks. They've told 150,000 people to head to evacuation centers. Power was knocked out to thousands of homes. Rail services were suspended. And authorities say 3 nearby nuclear facilities have not been damaged. Some 300,000 Haitians living in the U.S. are now without protected immigration status. The designation was terminated on Monday. The Supreme Court made the decision last month. Franz Andre is an advocate for asylum seekers in Montreal. He says many of them now fear what could happen to their relatives south of the border.
The Asian community here, there's quite a few of them who have family members in the States. This is what is called deportation by proxy.
Community groups and advocates in Montreal say Canada needs to support those facing possible deportation. But, at least for now, Canada's tightened asylum rules mean only exceptional cases will be allowed into the country. The now revoked designation was initially granted to Haitians in the U.S. after the 2010 earthquake. Volunteer fire departments in Northern Ontario are now working to keep bushfires at bay. This year's wildfires have already displaced nearly 3,000 people in the region. As Sarah Law reports, volunteer support is crucial in battling fires in rural areas.
We got lots of bush roads that the fire trucks can't make it in.
Leon Nianakisik is the fire chief of White Sand First Nation and Armstrong. The close-knit communities north of Thunder Bay are under evacuation as wildfires continue to threaten the area.
And this is our first evacuation, and it's a learning experience for all of us.
Local crews have stepped up, working long hours with limited resources.
It could be a day of clearing trail going into an access area before we can actively fight the fire.
That's Devin Jackson, a captain with the Gillies Volunteer Fire Department outside Thunder Bay. His team, Anthony Anakisics, are among several receiving equipment from Canadian charity Global Medic. This includes portable tanks that can turn pickup trucks into mini pumper trucks and larger mobile pumping units. Nianakisik says he hopes wildfire evacuees can return home soon and that communities like his will be better prepared for emergencies in the future. Sarah Law, CBC News, Thunder Bay, Ontario.
Toronto's mayor says she wants the land expropriated by the province to expand a city airport. Olivia Chow says now that the plan for Toronto's Billy Bishop Airport has been stopped by the federal government, the province should return the property. CBC's Sean Jeffords has the story.
Message to our provincial friends, please give us the park back.
A request by Toronto Mayor Olivia Chow over the weekend, now an urgent motion before City Council. Chow is asking councillors to back her demand that the province return land it wanted to expropriate to expand Billy Bishop Airport.
We would like our little Norway Park back, please.
In March, Premier Doug Ford announced a plan to expand the city's island airport. That would have allowed jets to use Billy Bishop and greatly increase its capacity. To do that, the province passed a bill to expropriate city lands. On Friday, the federal government rejected the expansion plan, but the province has indicated it still plans to move forward. NDP leader Marit Stiles says it's not clear how the province would accomplish that.
Well, the Minister of Transportation is delusional. He thinks that this project can continue to move forward without the federal government's support.
Liberal MPP Adil Shamji called on the PCs to abandon their plan.
You can count on this government to say anything and everything. To counter with bluff and bluster, to try and save face in what must be an absolutely embarrassing situation.
The province did not directly respond to questions about the expansion or say if it will return the city lands. Sean Jeffords, CBC News, Toronto.
That is the latest national and international news from World Report. For News Anytime, cbcnews.ca. I'm Marcia Young.
Good Tuesday morning, everyone. I'm Marcy Marcusa. This is Information Radio. We're live in downtown Winnipeg on CBC 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app and YouTube. Another very hot day on the way. Heat warnings included, and the full forecast in minutes here on the show. Coming up this hour on the program, we are going to have a follow-up to an interview we had yesterday with Gail Asper on the show. She, of course, a philanthropist who says her family is, though, pausing financial support to the Canadian Museum for Human Rights over a Palestinian exhibit. As you may have heard, Asper's calling for a review of the museum's curation process. We're going to talk with a scholar this hour in museum studies about the standard of curatorial freedom when it comes to the creation of museum exhibits. So stay tuned. We'll look at that story from this point of view. In addition, this hour on the show, Canadian Blood Services has seen a significant drop in donations over the past 2 months across Canada. What's happening in Manitoba? We're going to hear that in just a moment. Right now, let's go to Heather Wells, who's here with headlines. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, Manitoba's government is keeping the Sturgeon Falls Trail in the Whiteshell closed for now. That path closed last week after 2 young brothers drowned in a wide set of rapids at the end of the trail. A provincial spokesperson says the trail will be off limits until there are changes to improve safety there. The mother of one of the victims, 3 people have died in that area since 2023. The mother of one of the victims says new efforts are coming way too late. A former NDP cabinet minister responsible for Manitoba Hydro says governments haven't done enough to make sure there's more wind power in this province. Tim Sale was energy minister from 2002 to 2004. Sale pushed to create the wind farm in St. Leon and is now disappointed Manitoba has only 2 wind farms. We'll hear from him coming up in our next local news at 7:30.
All right. Thanks, Heather.
Thank you.
Well, let's find out about the wind and the heat and the forecast with Abby.
Yes, Marcy. Heat warnings in effect across southern Manitoba today, bringing soaring temperatures, humidex values near 40 in the southern parts of the province, and of course some afternoon storms. We're looking at a hot and humid day for most regions in southern Manitoba today. Winnipeg, we're starting the day still at 20 degrees, sunny outside, just a few clouds. We're heading to a hot afternoon high of 31 degrees, and looking at the humidex factored in, it will be feeling close to 40. We just have that slight chance of showers and maybe some thunderstorms in the mix, and that's what we're seeing across southern Manitoba this morning. Some regions around 16, some regions getting close to 20 degrees from the Pembina Valley region all the way to the Interlake regions. We're seeing some areas with sunny conditions, some fog patches around the Brandon Dauphin area, and we'll see it clear as you get into the morning with temperatures climbing into the 31 degrees range, and the humidex value around 40 with a good chance of showers in most of the regions. But up north, it's more about warming up temperatures. We're seeing 16s to 19s, and of course highs will be around 29, 26. But down south, it's more about hot and humid today, and you need to remember to hydrate. Right now, Winnipeg 20, aiming for 31, and the humidex 40.
Now, speaking of hydrating, Corey Funk, let's talk about something a lot of Manitobans did over the weekend. Mm-hmm. They took part in a run that you actually helped organize up around the beaches.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah, it's called the Grandstand. It's a 15K, kind of starts on Lester Beach and ends on Lester Beach, too. It takes people through the beautiful Grand Beach trails. So,
lovely. How many people were running?
About, I think, 83 people officially ran.
This was Saturday?
This was Saturday,
okay.
Yeah. And then we had actually, I just told you the age range. We had from 15 to 78.
How did you manage all of you in the heat?
It was muggy, but we have an aid station full of lovely volunteers dressed. There was a bee-themed aid station for some reason, but they were giving out watermelon and water.
Wow.
And people just push. People could just get it done. Yeah.
I have no idea. I walk when I golf, and
I know, right?
some of the days in this heat just walking. Yeah. So I can't imagine running.
And the
a race.
reward at the end was freezies and a dip in the lake. So
very nice. Well, dip in the lakes would be well earned after that.
Very much.
What about the commute otherwise? If people are out there,
yeah, a couple of things to keep an eye out for. So that first off, I had mentioned that stalled semi a little while back at the corner of northbound La Jamodière and Headmaster. That is now clear. But I do want to let people know about some construction. So in the Elmwood area, so all the northbound lanes and all southbound lanes, as well as the east and west sidewalk on Gray Street between McCalman Avenue, from McCalman Avenue to Herbert Avenue, is going to be closed for construction starting today until July 31st. So you want to find an alternative route if Gray Street in the Elmwood area is part of your commute. Other than that, though, if you do see something else going on, if you're walking your bike and you're driving, you can give me a call on the CBC commuter line. That number, 204-788-3093.
Well, as I mentioned, nationally, Canadian Blood Services has reported a significant drop in blood donations in recent weeks. So in a release that came out last week, the charity said the, quote, blood supply declined by nearly 20% since June 1st in Canada. Now, to keep up with demand, they said they need to book about 18,000 appointments a week, but they've fallen short 15 to 2,500 every week since June 1st. Now, many donation centres have added additional weekend appointments to try and increase opportunities to donate. We thought we would look at how things are looking like, what things are looking like in Manitoba this morning. So Ron Vizina is with us live on Zoom, Vice President of Donor Engagement for Canadian Blood Services. Good morning.
Good morning.
So how do that 20% concern, the decline across the country in donations, is that number the same in Manitoba?
It's across the board. We run a national inventory so that the units that are donated in one part of the country could end up in the other, and as much as possible, we try to keep them close to home. But we're seeing it. This is pretty systemic, and since June 1st. We've seen a gap week over week over week that we've been trying to close and trying to address. But we were getting to the point where the trend, if it continued, would get us into a precarious position with hospital supply. So that's why we felt the need to bring it to the public's attention. We know that typically in the summer that people's routines change. Some people are donors as a result of their work life or their school life, and all those routines change. And we plan for that. But this year, what we've seen is even above and beyond what we've expected, a continuous decline in performance. And when more units are going out the door to the hospitals and are coming in from donors, it draws down on that supply. And since it's a fresh blood product, it's a just-in-time inventory. We can't stockpile this for a rainy day. We need a constant supply of donors every day.
What if the numbers coming in are less? What are the numbers going out like? Like, do you have an understanding about in Manitoba or across the country, whatever stat you might have, how much blood is going out the door? Yeah, to the hospitals. Is that increased?
I would just say that it's what we expected. So that's why we're a bit perplexed at why we're in this predicament. The number of units going to hospitals, the amount of donors that are canceling or changing appointments, or the people who are being deferred for eligibility criteria, all these things should indicate, all of our indicators should indicate that we're in a better position. But that, week over week over week decline for the last 6 weeks plus has resulted in a drawdown of that inventory.
So there's not an increase there's not increased pressure on the inventory. There's not more blood needed by hospitals.
Not above and beyond what we had expected. No,
yeah.
We know that there's a lot of trauma that happens in the summer too. There's more people on the roads, on the lakes with boating. We also know that cancer care that requires blood products and other chronic conditions continue throughout the summer. Like the need for blood doesn't take a summer vacation. So we plan for a certain amount, and the hospitals have been using pretty much what we expected.
So what's behind the decline in donations? And also, if you could, in Manitoba, every province must be slightly different as well, just in terms of what local things might be keeping people from getting to donate. What's your sense about what's behind this?
Again, I think we're a bit perplexed at the reasons for the changes in bookings. Our donor base in Manitoba, I think nationally the average is about 2% participation. We know that Manitoba punches above its weight. It's about 2.5%. I'd still love to see more Manitobans participating. So we have more donors to call on, but it's just that the ask that we've been making for the last number of weeks, for some reason, it's not sticking to the same degree as it perhaps would have in the past, and that's what's creating that gap. We're not seeing anything specific to Manitoba or any other part of the country. There seems to be, in fact, even our American counterparts are in a similar predicament. They're in a much worse position right now. But this is something that, again, we expect a decline in the summer. This is just even worse than we expected and planned for. In the last 6 weeks, we've been doing everything we typically do, more calls, more emails, more text messages, whatever it may be. And it's just not getting the stick rate that we had hoped.
Are you opening? I was going to ask you about that. What have you done to open up appointment availability or making, donations more accessible?
We've added hours, we've added beds, we've added locations. There is plenty space and appointment slots in the system for people to try to find an appointment. And we run 20,000 events every year across Canada. In Winnipeg, we have the permanent site on William Street. We have events coming up in Selkirk, in Brandon, and Gimli. There's all kinds of events that are happening in the next 6 weeks. And the best way for people to check and see where the closest opportunity is to download our app, Give Blood app, or go to blood.ca. And there's always a convenient place and time somewhere near you.
As I mentioned in the introduction, some centers in this country are going to weekend hours or opening things up, stretching hours. Have you had to do that as well?
Yes, yeah, for sure. I mean, adding hours and capacity to the hours that donors want to come is part of our priority. We want to make sure that donor experience is a great one. And we've added capacity across the system. In some of that, like I said, is in mobile units that are closer to smaller communities, where we go out like a MASH tent and set up and tear down in a community center or church basement or something like that. And plus, we have permanent facilities where we have more flexibility, try to bring in more groups. But again, we're seeing that those summer habits are a little bit off, and we're hoping that hearing this message, certainly in the last 2 days, the outlook is looking a bit better. We've had very good collection days, and I think Canadians are hearing the call for donors.
I want to just widen out for a moment here. Like, what's the overall trend for blood donation numbers if you look over, say, the next 20 years? Can you outline some of the concern there?
So our strategic priority is really to build up the donor base. I mentioned at the top of the interview that there's only about 2% of Canadians that are giving blood. 15, 20 years ago, that was about 4%. So the participation rate hasn't grown with the population to the same degree. And we know that demand for blood products and plasma products across the country are only going to keep increasing with new modalities for treatment. So we are planning for that. But to do that, we can't rely on a small army. We have to grow the donor base. We also have to make sure that it reflects Canada's diversity, both in terms of participation, but also for patient care. So diversifying and growing the donor base for the next 5 to 10 years is a key priority of the organization.
What about young people? I know you have research by the Red Cross that's shown that fewer young people are donating blood. What do you do to attract that group?
So, yeah, I think we certainly do a lot of market research, try to understand what is motivating for them. A lot of the campaigns you would see that we have in market now are skewed towards that younger audience. We go to schools, we do go to campuses, we have youth programs. So there's a lot in the queue to try to get younger donors. The 17 to 24-year-old group is actually a pretty strong participant in the system, and sometimes 24 to 35. That's where we see the dip, but it's because they're building their careers, they're building their families, they're building their lives. But we know, though, if they started giving 17 to 24, there's a good chance that they'll come back to us later on. So those school programs, those youth programs are a key part of the future.
Have you been affected at all by misinformation, do you think, or by trends or movements since COVID for people to be skeptical of interacting with any sort of public health, or maybe rolling up their sleeves and taking a needle in any way? I'm just wondering whether or not there's just more people who might have a fear, whether founded or not, of giving blood, of doing this.
Yeah, well, so as you can imagine, we do a lot of market research, and that doesn't seem to come up. There's, for 20 years, been looking at market research about why people give and don't give, and time after time after time, the number one reason why people say they don't give blood is because no one asked me. And we feel like we're asking all the time. But I think what people are telling us is, I didn't feel that ask was to me. I thought it was maybe to my neighbor or my friend or someone else. Fear of needles, it does show up, but most often it's a lower reason. The other reason that we see is time and convenience. So that is something else we're trying to address by having, our app is more efficient. The check-in process used to be, I've been with the blood system for 20 years. It used to be over an hour and a half to do a donation experience. We've got that down to about 45 minutes now. And the time in the chair is like 6 to 12 minutes. It's not very long. So all these things are really part of our strategy to make it more convenient, to have people think that message is to them, and get them participating as well.
Thanks so much for your time this morning. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Marcy.
It is Ron Vizina weighing in on some of the concerns of Canadian Blood Services that also echo here in Manitoba about the drop in donations, especially since the start of June, 20% down across the board. The Vice President, Ron is the Vice President of Donor Engagement for Canadian Blood Services here in Manitoba. I'm Marcy Marcusa. Thanks for joining us on 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app and on YouTube. And part of me, Ron, is Vice President overall of Canadian Blood Services. It is time now for morning sports, and that means we say hello to Scott Regier. Hey there, Scott.
Good morning, Marcy.
How you doing?
Nice to talk to you again.
Good,
Yeah, doing
yeah.
well. Thank you.
I love that you played Hammer Time yesterday on sports. I do listen when I'm off. Canada's coming off its best day yet at the Commonwealth Games, speaking of which, eh?
Yeah, after starting things off in Glasgow on a 3-medal-a-day pace, Marcy, Canadians exploded yesterday and won a dozen of them. 2 of those came in the men's hammer throw, where Rowan Hamilton won the bronze and Ethan Katzberg claimed the gold. The mustachioed behemoths from BC are part of a national program that just might be the world's best right now, and Katzberg was asked what the key to Canada's hammer throwing success is.
It's a secret. We're not allowed to tell you. Rowan knows. He can tell you if he wants, but there'd be repercussions if he did. We're incredibly lucky to have so many incredible hammer throwers just come up at the exact same time. It's an incredibly exciting time for hammer throw for athletics in Canada right now. We're all pushing each other. I was cheering for him the whole competition. He was doing the same for me. So it is really a camaraderie, and yeah, it's a really special time for hammer throwing.
Today, it's Cameron Rogers' turn. The Richmond, BC native is the reigning Olympic and world champion in the women's event, and she'll compete at just before 2 o'clock Central Time. Rogers, Marcy, is far from alone, though, when it comes to Canadian medal hopes today. Canada's men's and women's 3x3 wheelchair basketball teams will both be playing for spots in the semifinals, and I like their chances, considering the men won silver at the last Commonwealth Games, while the women claimed gold. As things sit, Canada is in third in both golds and overall medals behind Australia and England. And for those wondering, Canada has finished first at a Commonwealth Games once before. That's when Edmonton hosted them back in 1978.
Let's go to soccer. The head of FIFA has written this long message on social media denouncing his critics.
Yeah, a 15-part message on Instagram from Gianni Infantino, which accuses those who oppose him of spreading hatred. The written offering, Marcy, echoes these comments Infantino made in his pre-World Cup press conference.
Maybe sometimes it's good as well to just chill, relax. And when I say to chill, I don't mean to not think. I mean to trust us. We always try to make the situation as positive as possible and to find solutions. Sometimes we manage, other times not. We don't live on the moon, we live on planet Earth, and you have to deal with different situations. We try to do our best.
His critics say Infantino did far from his best during the World Cup. There were unprecedented high ticket prices. There was the tournament's treatment of the Iranian team. And there was alleged political influence by U.S. President Donald Trump in letting American player Folarin Balogun avoid a red card. It's all led to a less than chilled out response. Jamie Raskin, the top Democrat on the House Judiciary Committee, has just sent a letter to Infantino seeking documents detailing ties between FIFA and the Trump administration. FIFA has not yet responded to that letter. If you're wondering about Infantino's job security, more than 200 of FIFA's 211 members have endorsed him ahead of the presidential election come March.
Let's finish with some baseball.
What is it?
Another Dragon sighting last night in the Blue Jays win over Washington. Luis Urias hit the difference-making home run, Marcy, which prompted his teammates to hand him the plush red toy that's come as a reward for every Toronto long ball of late. Fans have certainly taken notice of the home run dragon, buying it en masse, meaning toy stores around this country have sold out. Resale platforms are now listing the $40 toy for as much as $200. The Jays still popular, even if they have just an 8% chance of making the playoffs as things stand.
Yeah, we're not going to have last year, I don't think.
Don't think so.
All right, thanks, Scott.
You bet.
Scott Regier with Morning Sports. Still ahead, we're going to hear how Winnipeg's Living Prairie Museum is planning on celebrating 50 years. That's after your CBC News.
This is CBC News. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 7:30, it's 20 degrees. We're going to be hot again today as we continue to bake under heat warnings. In fact, most of Manitoba today under a heat warning. Mix of sun and clouds with a risk of a thunderstorm, chance of showers. Today's high in Winnipeg, 31, but the humidex will feel like 40. A Manitoba mother who lost her son to drowning in 2023 says new efforts to prevent similar tragedies at Sturgeon Falls are coming too late. Usaid Habib slipped into fast-moving rapids after falling from the rocks at the end of the Sturgeon Falls Trail in the Whiteshell 3 years ago. The province is now keeping that path closed, pending new safety measures after two brothers drowned last week in that same area. Habib's mother, Arouj Danish, says the province should have limited public access after her son's death.
We were grieving, but the authorities knew. Everybody was seeing that. So why didn't no one ever thought of doing this? Why did something else need to be happen? Something needs to reoccur in order to get the safety measures done.
Danish now wants the province to also inspect other Manitoba Park trails for similar drowning risks. A group representing Canadian manufacturers says it's disappointed the sector is being targeted by U.S. tariffs again. U.S. President Donald Trump threatens to implement 50% tariffs on a wide range of Canadian exports starting next month. Alan Arcand is chief economist at Canadian Manufacturers and Exporters. He says the manufacturing industry in North America builds things together. They're not competing, so the tariffs don't make any sense.
50% tariff would be extremely challenging for manufacturers. Not only the direct impact is damaging the industry, but the uncertainty of this constantly shifting trade announcements, tariff announcements are also damaging the industry, making it hard for manufacturers to plan.
Those 50% tariffs are currently set to take effect August 19th. Arcand hopes all levels of government in Canada provide support to help the industry navigate these challenges. A former NDP cabinet minister for Manitoba Hydro says governments haven't done enough to ensure there's more wind power in this province. Tim Sale was energy minister from 2002 to 2004 when Gary Dewar was premier. Sale pushed to create the wind farm in St. Leon. He is now disappointed Manitoba only has 2 wind farms.
In Alberta, Saskatchewan, BC, Ontario, Quebec, they all have major wind power. Now, why our government has not pushed hydro harder, I don't know.
Manitoba Hydro plans to partner with Indigenous-led companies to create 600 megawatts of wind power. Sale says hydro ought to do more. Manitoba's only supervised drug consumption site will fully open on August 11th. That's according to the provincial government. A spokesperson tells CBC News Aboriginal Health and Wellness, which will operate the site at 366 Henry, has more training for staff lined up. The spokesperson says once it's open, the site will operate Tuesdays to Saturdays from 11 in the morning until 6:45 at night. The wars in Ukraine and the Middle East will be the spotlight in Washington today. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky being greeted there at Joint Base Andrews. He will meet with U.S. President Donald Trump. Zelensky says anti-ballistic defense is one of his key priorities in his country's defense against Russia. Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is also in Washington to meet with the U.S. President. The two are expected to discuss the war in Iran and the ongoing conflict in Gaza. Zelensky and Netanyahu will join Trump for the funeral of Senator Lindsey Graham later today. The longtime Republican senator died unexpectedly on July 11th. In one of his final official acts, Graham visited Kyiv, securing sanctions on countries purchasing Russian exports. You can hear the latest national and international news coming up on World Report at 8. Housing construction in a southeast Manitoba town is making some wonder if it's going to make that town feel too much like a city. The town is Ile-des-Chênes, and the Oak River Meadow development there will add about 1,000 homes, raising the population from about 1,500 to nearly 4,000. Resident Emile Leroux says while there will be some advantages, like more business, he's not sold on expansion.
We like the small town feel. At this stage, I mean, it's quite a big expansion. Almost seems like it's almost doubling the size of the town. So, not too sure how that's going to turn out. Not really in favor of a big expansion. So I guess we'll see how it goes.
A councillor for the arm of Richot says the plan is for homes to be ready to show in the Parade of Homes in September. Ile-des-Chênes is about 25 kilometers southeast of Winnipeg. You can find the latest news updated throughout the day at cbc.ca/Manitoba.
All right, thanks, Heather.
Thanks.
Abby, the weather.
Yeah, Marcy, we're still looking at those heat warnings in effect across much of the province today. We're talking about stretching from the southern regions into parts of northern Manitoba this morning, where the humidex really pushing close to 40 across the south, while the power flim, we're going to see highs around at the 30-degree mark. So you need to stay hydrated, take breaks, and always remember, don't leave pets inside of parked vehicles. I will always insist on that. I love pets. For Winnipeg right now, 20 degrees. Sunny outside, just a few clouds. Expect a hot afternoon. We're looking at a high around 31 with a humidex around that 40 degrees. Across the Pembina Valley region, we do have temperatures sitting near 20, also with sunshine climbing to 31 later, near 40. That's what it's going to feel like. There's a slim chance of afternoon showers and maybe some thunderstorms. In the Brandon area, 16, we're still seeing foggy conditions there. The skies will turn mainly sunny later, and you'll notice some hazy conditions develop as you get into the afternoon period. Expect your high to climb to about 31 later. Dauphin, you are at 18 and sunny. Expect a mix of sun and clouds later through the day and a chance of showers and maybe some afternoon thunderstorms also coming your way. Highs will be crawling to about 31. In the Interlake region, we're looking at temperatures sitting at 16 right now in the Gimli area. Sunshine there. Expect a high of 31 and the humidex will be around 40. Also have late day showers and maybe some thunderstorm in the mix. We now cross into the central parts of the province where we're looking at the Par Flin-Flon, both sitting near 20 degrees, mostly cloudy there. Reaching a high of 29. There's a risk of thunderstorms this afternoon in that part of the province. Norway House is at 16 with a mix of sun and clouds, climbing to 29. Thompson is seeing foggy conditions at 10 degrees right now, reaching 26. And Lynn Lake is at 14 with misty conditions and topping out near 25. For the Churchill region, we're waking up to 15 degrees right now. We'll see highs around 18 later today. So it's going to be hot and humid in the southern part of the province. Winnipeg right now, 20, aiming for 31 later.
All right, thanks, Abby.
Thank you.
Corey Funk, what's up with the commute?
The biggest issue is actually some new construction in Elmwood. So on Gray Street between McCalman Avenue and Herbert Avenue, it's actually going to be closed. All the northbound, southbound lanes, including the sidewalks, closed starting today until July 31st. So heads up there. If you do see anything else going on, though, you can give us a call on the CBC commuter line. It's pretty quiet so far. That number to call, 204-788-3093.
All right, thanks very much, Corey.
Thank you.
It is 7:38 a.m. on 89.3 FM, 990 a.m. on that app and on YouTube. Still ahead on the program in this half hour of the show, a board member for the Canadian Museum for Human Rights, Gail Asper, who obviously was instrumental in bringing that museum to Winnipeg, is calling now for a review of the museum's policies on curation. She was on Information Radio yesterday. This is after the opening of the Nakba exhibit. Coming up, we're going to hear this morning from a museum studies scholar. She's going to talk about the role of the curators should play in museums, where they take their information from, how they decide on context, and what the role of community is. So stay tuned. That is coming up in this half hour of the show. Right now, though, to something lovely. Winnipeg's Living Prairie Museum is gearing up to celebrate 50 years. The museum includes an interpretive center and an urban nature preserve of prairie grasses and more. It first opened back in 1976. So they're celebrating their half century coming up on August 8th. And Marika Olenek is with us to tell us what they're going to be doing. She's the museum's curator there. Good morning.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here. So if people have not been to Living Prairie, I did my best to describe it, but how do you describe, how it came to be and what its purpose is in our community?
Yeah, it's really just a special gem. A lot of people don't even know it's there. We're 35-acre nature preserve tucked into the heart of St. James, right on Ness Avenue. And yeah, beginning back in the 1960s, people identified this rare habitat, tall grass prairie, which is actually what, most of Winnipeg used to be, but nearly all of it is gone. And they lobbied to protect it. And fortunately, at the time, City Council agreed, and they set aside our little patch of prairie as a nature preserve when they built the neighborhood out there. And in 1976, it was dedicated as an interpretive center as well. So we do all kinds of programming. People can come there, just spend some nice time outside, or do some activities or programs with us to learn more about nature in our city.
I think I've snowshoed back in the day around the plant somewhere in one of the programs. How have things changed there over the 50 years? How much have the museum's offerings changed, and how much has the landscape changed?
The landscape has not actually changed a ton. Since the place got started, we've been doing all kinds of work to make sure that we're taking care of that prairie. So we do things like prescribe burns every year, and they've been doing it, since the late 60s now. That really helps take care of the land. So we've been doing that. This prairie's been here for 8,000 years. So it's our job to take care of it and help it stay healthy as we go forward. In terms of the interpretive offers, those have obviously changed a lot over the years. Maybe some people will come back for the 50th and remember, the big stuffed bison that used to be inside. That thing got into too rough of shape. But we've always done things like guided walks. We do lots of kids and school programs. And then, of course, in the summer, we do things for everybody. We're open 6 days a week. So there's all kinds of drop-in programs and guided walks, things like that people can come for.
What do you do with the bison that's gotten into rough of shape? Where do you put it?
I believe it was donated to another museum that had more capacity for it.
It's somewhere. Tell me a little bit about what you're planning for the 50th. There's a lot of special events coming up.
Yeah, so we're rolling the 50th into our annual Monarch Butterfly Festival. So it's going to be August 8th and 9th. On the 8th, we're going to do our special commemoration for the 50th. So we'll have the mayor and some other dignitaries there. We'll have cake for the community because everybody loves cake. And then we're doing a few special activities. One is our Prairie Past and Future activity. So people get a chance to contribute to a beautiful design board that's going to share both people's memories of Living Prairie Museum, but also our hopes for the future. And then, of course, the festival itself has all kinds of different activities. There's crafts and activities. We've got lots of partners coming. There's going to be guided walks. There's going to be special talks and presentations. So something for all ages.
I understand one of your long-term hopes as you look forward to more years at the museum is to have walking paths and some different ways to experience the outdoor prairie.
Yeah, we've always had walking trails. Not everybody's able to move along those because they're wood-chipped paths. And so this summer we're installing a new accessible trail that's going to go around the building that gets right up to the edge of the prairie so everybody can visit it themselves. We're going to be improving some of our gates and some other things as well later this summer. And the idea is this is part of our heritage as Winnipeggers. It's here for everybody. So we want to make sure everyone can visit and feel included when they come to Living Prairie Museum.
Do you know how many varieties, like if we look at the prairie itself, how many varieties of like flowers, grasses, or, what's mostly out there if people are walking through in any given season?
Yeah, we've identified over the last 50 years over 150 different types of plants just in our little 35 acres. So it's incredibly diverse. And like you said, it's different every season. If you come one time and then come 2 weeks later, you're going to see different things blooming, different things growing. The grass really shot up in the last week or so. We're a tall grass prairie, and you can really tell right now. So it's beautiful. It's diverse. There's butterflies, there's bees, there's all kinds of things happening all the time.
Well, congrats on 50 years. It's an amazing gem, as you said, right in the middle of the city. And we appreciate you being on this morning to tell us about your upcoming anniversary.
Thanks so much for having me. Have a good morning.
Yeah, you too. That's Marika Olenek, who's with us live, the curator of the Living Prairie Museum out in St. James. So their 50th anniversary and the Butterfly Festival coinciding. It's all coming up on August 8th, and you can check out the Living Prairie Museum online anytime if you're checking out something to do in these hot summer days.
You know the voices that tell the story of our province. Now you can take them anywhere. From the essential start to your day on information radio to the conversations that define our lunch hour on Radio Noon and the pulse of the city on Up to Speed, Your local connection is always within reach. Just open the CBC News app, tap the local drop-down, and hit play. Your favorite voices, your province, right in your pocket. Download the CBC News app today, your daily rhythm, live and local.
Time right now is 7:45 a.m. Thanks for being with us on this Tuesday morning, July 28th already, nearing the end of the month here. It's 20 degrees in Winnipeg. It's foggy in Brandon, shallow fog in Thompson. We're all going to be hot here, a high of 31 for Winnipeg with Humidex 40. Same with Brandon and up in Thompson, high of 26, but with Humidex 30. Now, there's heat warnings triggered for parts of the north this morning and also for a big part of south and central Manitoba, including the city of Winnipeg. So it's once again just a day to get that hat on, limit your activity, all those good things we know how to do. You drink the water. Coming up after 8 o'clock on the show here, there are renewed calls, as you may have heard from Heather Wells in the news, to increase safety at the site of Sturgeon Falls in the Whiteshell after 4 drownings over the past 3 years. Now, this includes the 2 brothers who drowned in the waters just earlier this month. This morning, we're going to talk to a researcher who has studied risk mitigation in parks specifically and how park staff attribute responsibility during an accident. So stay tuned. We'll have that coming up for you after 8 o'clock right here on Information Radio. Time now, though, for just a little bit of local music. Here's Winnipeg's Ami Sheehan with Driving.
Driving round with you by my side makes me feel so good, makes me feel alive. Windows down, breeze blowing, don't know where we feel like going, but you're by my side, yeah, you're by my side. Stay by my side, by my side. I got nothing but open road and time. I don't even care about the clouds in the sky. They looking kinda cute, kinda caught my eye, my eye. You like it when I speed up and when I take it slow. Anywhere you want, you just tell me to go. Are we there yet? Are we getting close? Baby, you kissed it. Feels so good when I'm driving with you. Let's slow down like a picture. Or maybe make a stop and just take a video. A video, a video, a video, a video. Not that drunk, giving the sense. Back it up, only the best. La la la, baby, you guessed it. Baby, you guessed it. Baby, you guessed it.
Ami Sheehan, a little bit of drive-in on CBC. A lot of Winnipeg-based artists making their mark, including Ami Sheehan. It's 12 minutes to 8 o'clock now on CBC. Well, next on the show, we have a follow-on, a story we brought you yesterday. Philanthropist Gail Asper, who was on the ground floor of creating the Canadian Museum for Human Rights and making it possible in Winnipeg, says her family is now pausing funding over a Palestinian exhibit. The exhibit, Palestine Uprooted, Nakba Past and Present, explores the Nakba, the Arabic term for catastrophe that describes the displacement of approximately 750,000 Palestinians after Israel declared independence in 1948. Asper, who has donated money to the Human Rights Museum along with the Asper Foundation over the years, said she found many elements of the exhibit compelling, but also said it lacked context and has concerns about that. She said the 2 panels written by museum staff explaining the Nakba lacked important context about what was happening in Israel and the broader Middle East at the time. She's calling for the Human Rights Museum to face a review, scrutinizing their policy on curatorial independence. Now, this is part of the interview with Asper, which this is just a clip. This interview was 2 parts. We aired 26 minutes. Please go to our website and have a listen to the whole thing. But this is part of what she said yesterday morning.
I think this museum does need a bigger review of their policies on how they come to these decisions on how they do their what exhibits they do and how they're done, and who's driving these exhibits and who's watching the curators and holding them to account. Because I think it's fair game to, like, no curator has the right to hijack a national federal institution and present their ideological positions at the expense of truth and accuracy, a lack of bias. You need to make sure that you don't have bias in an institution.
Asper outlined some of her specific concerns around context, saying that she wished that they had explained in the exhibit what Hamas was, the identification of Hamas in more detail. She also says she felt that the exhibit should have started with explanation of a two-state solution being offered to Palestinians as it was to Israelis in 1947, a year before the exhibit started, its timeline, and also that there was no mention of Israeli hostages that were taken in the October 7th attack, also which she said was an omission. Now, in a statement, the CMHR says it stands behind their curatorial process. Irina Michalike is an associate professor in the Faculty of Information at the University of Toronto, and for clarity, she was not involved in the curation of the Nakba exhibit, but she is here with her understanding about how curation works. Good morning.
Good morning.
Thanks for being with us. So, who holds curators to account?
Well, that is a very complex question that I'm going to try to unpack very briefly. But perhaps I'm allowed to return to the idea of curatorial independence and curatorial freedom, right? So curators have intellectual agency, which is entrusted upon them by the museum itself, by who employ curators. And I'm gonna return to your question, but I think it's important to note that curatorial freedom or independence is what allows museums to engage with very complex and difficult and challenging topics, and actually act as places of civil discourse, right? So in this particular context, curatorial independence or curatorial freedom comes with a great sense of responsibility. And who holds curators responsible? I think, of course, curators are responsible to a wide variety of stakeholders, the museum administration, the public, other colleagues in the field, the scholarship itself, scholarly communities, audiences. But I think it's important to note that in the case of an exhibition like this one, which is a community-centered exhibition, who should be holding the curator responsible are the communities that are at the center of this particular exhibition.
So how do you know how many communities to consult? And I'm just asking because if you have, I'm not just thinking about this exhibit, in any exhibit, in anything that has to do with persecution, there's a number of different communities and a number, things are layered, they're complicated. How do you know what context means? And how do you know how many people to consult if you're a curator? How might you evaluate that?
Yeah, so again, that is a challenge, I think, and the beauty of curatorial practice. I think, and I want to center here, if I'm allowed, this particular exhibition, but also I want to emphasize something that I think was not mentioned in a lot of the conversations that have happened around this exhibition, is that this exhibition is a community-centered exhibition, which is a very common type of exhibition that exists within the museum field. And in this particular exhibition, the decision was made that the voices of the specific community, in this case, Canadian Palestinian communities, are going to be centered, right? So that's a first decision that a museum, the curators, the administration have to make even before they start to think about the exhibition itself, right? And in a community-centered exhibition, the idea is not to present the community as a monolithic entity, but to allow the community to tell its stories and to reveal the diversity of their experiences through the sharing of stories. So I think this element is very important to be considered in this conversation. So it's not necessarily how many, like it's not always a numbers game, it's how can you build trust with the community that you want to integrate into your exhibition, And how do you develop that trust by having, perhaps multiple oral histories with the same individual that reveal their life story?
Gail Asper is obviously an honorary board member of the CMHR, as I mentioned, but she says board members weren't allowed to see the exhibit until it opened. Should a museum's board play a role in curation of exhibits?
I mean, I'm going to speak here on behalf of the kind of my field, right? I think the opinions are very diverse here, but I think what needs to be centered, especially in an exhibition that wants to give space to communities, is those voices need to be centered, right? So I think it's a contextual issue. I don't think this is a yes or no. The board should be offered control. I think what a museum needs to keep in mind is how can they maintain curatorial authority, but also how can they allow community voices, right, to speak within the exhibition. And I think a dilemma, and I'm not going to provide a solution, but I think a question that often can come up in situations like this is what is the museum ethically obliged to do when perhaps board members disagree with what communities are sharing, right? And this is, I think, the challenge of these exhibitions that are truly trying to honor the relationship with communities.
And what should a museum do when its curatorial process have been called into question? Right now, the CMHR, what should they do, and what have other museums done facing things like this? Would you add to it, or is that just making things more complicated for those that chose, had that curatorial freedom? Or at this point, what can be done?
Again, I'm gonna repeat this because it's so important, I think, for listeners to understand that this is a community-centric exhibition. So the first thing that a museum should do in situations like this, when an exhibition becomes controversial, is to check in with the communities, check in with the storytellers, check in with the narrators, right? I don't know how many people have actually seen the exhibition or look at the exhibition, but it has some incredible stories from some incredible people who have suffered trauma, who have rebuilt their lives.
So they should check in with those storytellers that offer their stories.
100%. That is the first, and I have not heard a lot of conversation in public discussions about how are they doing? How are they actually experiencing this controversy about an exhibition that includes their voices? And then the museum will need to figure out, how to mend bridges with other stakeholders. But if the museum is committed to a community-centric process, the communities have to be front and center.
Irina, I'm really hoping you can stay with us, and maybe we can continue our conversation after 8. I'm actually going to put you through to our director because there's so much to talk about here. I'll see if I can squeeze a few more minutes out of it. If not, I thank you for your time now. Corey's going to take you back here in the control room.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Just so much to talk about. So we've yet to ask about Mark Miller's role in this and commenting as well. So hopefully she can stay with us. Irina Michalake is the associate professor in the Faculty of Information over at the University of Toronto. And let's go to Heather Wells for headlines.
Well, Manitoba's government is keeping the Sturgeon Falls Trail in the White Shell closed for now. That path closed last week after 2 young brothers drowned in a wide set of rapids at the end of the trail. A provincial spokesperson says the trail will remain off limits pending changes to improve safety. At least 3 children and a woman have drowned in that area since 2023. I'll be back with more Manitoba news at 8:30.
Thank you, Heather. Well, we will continue our discussion about what's happening at CMHR after 8. Also, after 8 o'clock on the program, we're going to hear more about that Sturgeon Falls story and what you do to try to make things safer.
Today on Q. Constance Wu made a name for herself for her very funny role in the smash hit Crazy Rich Asians and starring in the sitcom Fresh Off the Boat.
Just gotta get a jump on my homework. Love you. You love me? What are you hiding?
Success hasn't been easy, but Constance is back in the spotlight starring in a new sci-fi thriller.
Q, this morning at 10:30 in Newfoundland, and on CBC Listen, or wherever you get your podcasts. The CBC News is next. Coming up in half an hour, it's The Current.
I'm Rebecca Zandbergen. The Manitoba government gives support to disabled children, but when they turn 18, much of that help dries up. We'll speak to two people affected about how to fix this and why the system needs an overhaul, coming up on The Current.
This is World Report. Good morning. I'm Marcia Young. At least 50 people are injured in an earthquake in Japan. A 7.1 magnitude quake rattled the southern island of Kyushu today. A roof cam in Kumamoto City captures the moment the quake struck. There are reports of damage to roads and bridges. A dozen buildings have collapsed. Officials are warning of possible aftershocks. They've told 150,000 people to head to evacuation centers. And power was knocked out to thousands of homes. Rail services were suspended. And authorities say 3 nearby nuclear facilities have not been damaged. There's more on this story at cbcnews.ca. It is a most read story on our main page. High-stakes meetings are happening in Washington today, but it will also be a day for dignitaries to honor a former colleague. The leaders of Ukraine and Israel will sit down for one-on-one talks with U.S. President Donald Trump. The leaders will also be attending the funeral of Senator Lindsey Graham. Graham was a defender of Ukraine in its fight against Russia. Reporter Kate Fisher joins me now from Washington. And Kate, what are we expecting from this meeting between Zelensky and Trump?
Well, in terms of what we expect from the meeting with President Zelensky, well, they haven't always gone that well, these meetings in the Oval Office. As you may remember, a famous one where Donald Trump got very frustrated with the Ukrainian leader. However, this time the tide seems to have turned somewhat, and certainly the language between the two has been much softer and much more friendly. And I think that President Zelensky will be trying to maximize on this, and perhaps, the fact that he's here to pay respects to Lindsey Graham, a big friend and political ally of Donald Trump. He'll be hoping that perhaps there is more sympathy shown by the American president. And of course, earlier this month at the NATO summit, Donald Trump agreed to allow Ukraine to produce its own Patriot interceptor missiles, this air defense system that is so vital to Ukraine. And I think, President Zelensky is going to be trying to maximize on that, try to get more support from the US, and perhaps try and push peace talks with Russia to try to find an end to this conflict.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu will also be at the White House. How important is this meeting?
Well, it's really important, particularly for Benjamin Netanyahu, who is facing an election this year in Israel and knows that his relationship with Donald Trump is a little bit more tricky than it has been in the past. Donald Trump has become increasingly frustrated with Mr. Netanyahu, and Benjamin Netanyahu is going to be trying to get things back on track with the US president, not just because he wants to see a return to full-scale war with Iran, something that Donald Trump seemingly is not wanting to do right now. He seems to be favoring the diplomatic resolution. He also wants to show that he still has this great, strong relationship with Donald Trump because it serves him well domestically back in Israel. Donald Trump, however, also knows he has midterm elections coming up in the US in the autumn. And he knows that this war is currently really unpopular with the American people. So there's going to be those differences to overcome in their meeting.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Marcia.
Reporter Kate Fisher in Washington. Crews battling wildfires in France and Spain will also be fighting the weather. Another heat wave will bring drier conditions and higher winds. More than 300,000 people in both countries have been forced from their homes. Journalist William Denslow visited an evacuation center in Bordeaux, France.
The wait for answers continues. Over 1,000 people, along with their pets, spent another night here at the Bordeaux Exhibition Centre after being forced to evacuate their homes. Many questioning when or if they'll be able to return home. The site is transforming. Over the weekend, it was a place to sleep and have a meal. Now there are legal and medical services, along with a growing volume of donations. A sign that, for some, the prospect of a quick return home seems unlikely. More than 40,000 hectares of land have burned in the region's wildfires, and the blazes remain less than 15 kilometres from Bordeaux. For a second straight night, the fires were held in check. Roughly 100 kilometres of trees have been cleared as authorities seek to create line breaks and remove the fuel that sustained this fire for days. Containment efforts appear to be working, but temperatures are rising. Parts of France could soar above 40 degrees Celsius this week. The hotter weather is expected to complicate firefighting efforts, a battle, officials say, that could be waged for months. William Denslow for CBC News, Bordeaux.
Some 300,000 Haitians living in the U.S. are now without protected immigration status. The designation was terminated on Monday. The Supreme Court made the decision last month. Franz Andre is an advocate for asylum seekers in Montreal. He says many of them now fear what could happen to their relatives south of the border.
The Asian community here, there's quite a few of them who have family members in the States. This is what I call deportation by proxy. These people are currently exposed, and ICE are actively looking for people to be deported.
Community groups and advocates in Montreal say Canada needs to support those facing possible deportation. But at least for now, Canada's tightened asylum rules mean only exceptional cases will be allowed into the country. The now revoked designation was initially granted to Haitians after the 2010 earthquake. Calgary police are refocusing their search for a missing 11-year-old boy with autism. Parker was last seen in Calgary's Thorncliffe neighborhood nearly 2 weeks ago. But as the CBC's Ina Sidhu reports, there is still hope of finding him.
Despite an extensive search covering 8,600 kilometers, there is still no sign of Parker. The 11-year-old has autism and is nonverbal. He was last seen on July 16th. Calgary Police Chief Katie McLellan says the service is committed to finding him, but their approach is changing.
If new information identifies an area requiring additional search activity, we are prepared and ready to respond.
Hundreds of officers and volunteers have been searching for Parker on the ground, by air, in bodies of water, and by knocking on doors. People have been asked to check backyards, sheds, garages, anywhere a child could hide. Acting Staff Sergeant Scott Gutterson says they don't suspect foul play.
It is our sincerest hope that Parker is still alive. But realistically, every day that goes by makes that hope less likely.
Ina Sidhu, CBC News, Calgary.
Johnson & Johnson has agreed to pay an estimated $5.5 billion to settle lawsuits over its baby powder. The product contains talcum powder and is alleged to cause ovarian cancer. The company's vice president of litigation called the claims meritless and says Johnson & Johnson was willing to settle for closure. The long-running legal battle covers 76,000 claims, and while Johnson & Johnson has denied that its talc-based products cause cancer, it has since changed the formula of its baby powder. Toronto's mayor says she wants the land expropriated by the province to expand a city airport. Olivia Chow says now that the plan for Toronto's Billy Bishop Airport has been stopped by the federal government, the province should return the property. CBC's Sean Jeffords has the story.
Message to our provincial friends, please give us the park back.
A request by Toronto Mayor Olivia Chow over the weekend, now an urgent motion before City Council. Chow is asking councillors to back her demand that the province return land it wanted to expropriate to expand Billy Bishop Airport.
We would like our little Norway Park back, please.
In March, Premier Doug Ford announced a plan to expand the city's island airport. That would have allowed jets to use Billy Bishop and greatly increase its capacity. To do that, the province passed a bill to expropriate city lands. On Friday, the federal government rejected the expansion plan, but the province has indicated it still plans to move forward. NDP leader Marit Stiles says it's not clear how the province would accomplish that.
Well, the Minister of Transportation is delusional if he thinks that this project can continue to move forward without the federal government's support.
Liberal MPP Adil Shamji called on the PCs to abandon their plan.
You can count on this government to say anything and everything, to counter with bluff and bluster, to try and save face in what must be an absolutely embarrassing situation.
The province did not directly respond to questions about the expansion or say if it will return the city lands. Sean Jeffords, CBC News, Toronto.
That is the latest national and international news from World Report. For news anytime, cbcnews.ca. I'm Marcia Young.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Marcy Marcusa. This is Information Radio. We're live in downtown Winnipeg. You're on CBC 89.3 FM on this hot Tuesday, July 28th. Thanks for being here. Hopefully summer break's going well so far. We're nearly halfway through the break already, right? Coming to the end of July. Abby's going to talk about the heat warnings and more in just a moment. But also this half hour on the program, we're going to talk about a tragedy. There are renewed calls to increase safety at the site of Sturgeon Falls in the Whiteshell after 4 drownings over the past 3 years, including the tragic death of 2 brothers who drowned in the waters earlier this month. We're going to talk to a researcher. She studied risk mitigation in parks and how park staff attribute to responsibility during a tragic accident and what can be done to make things safer. So stay tuned. She does come from the States, but she's going to apply some of what she's learned. We'll talk about it in a Canadian context. Stay with us. Also, we will have part 2 of a conversation with Irina Malalake. She was with us right before 8 o'clock talking about the NACBA exhibit. The controversy continues over that exhibit at the Canadian Museum for Human Rights. That conversation, though, that you're going to hear this half hour has to do with curation. And when curators are called out by community and an exhibit's called out as being problematic to a part of a community, what does a museum do? How do curators come to their decisions? And when are amendments actually called for versus being lobbied for example? So we're going to talk about that. This is a very important issue going on here. Right now, though, let's go to Heather Wells. She's in our news center with other stories.
Good morning. Manitoba's only supervised drug consumption site will fully open August 11th. That's according to the province. A spokesperson tells CBC News Aboriginal Health and Wellness, which will operate the site at 366 Henry, has more training lined up for staff. The city of Steinbach is trying to solve a case of missing plaques. Several bronze commemorative plaques have disappeared from Steinbach parks and public spaces. City workers noticed 6 of the plaques were missing while completing routine part work. Mayor Earl Funk says the thefts are in incredibly bad taste. We'll hear more in our next local news coming up at 8:30.
Thanks, Heather.
Thank you.
All right, let's go to what's happening in weather. Abby.
Intense heat and humidity dominates the province today with scattered storms in the forecast. Winnipeg, we are at 22. It's sunny outside. We get to 31 today with a humidex at 40.
All right, and Corey.
Very quiet commute overall, but if you do see something out there, you can give me a call on the CBC commuter line. That number, 204-788-3093.
Well, as you have been hearing, the Manitoba government says the trail to Sturgeon Falls remains closed while officials conduct a safety assessment. We're expecting to hear more from a provincial minister later this afternoon. Now, this comes after the bodies of 2 brothers were recovered in Nudimick Lake last week. RCMP say they were just 10 and 13. 10-year-old Maximo Ramirez slipped in the water at Sturgeon Falls in the Whiteshell. His 13-year-old brother, Aaron Ramirez, jumped in and tried to save him. Last year, at the same area, a 38-year-old Manitoba woman also drowned. She also slipped off the rocks into Sturgeon Falls Rapids. Now, this latest tragedy with their brothers has once again renewed calls for the province to increase safety in this area. Mohammed Danish Habib and Uruj Danish are upset this happened again. Their son drowned at Sturgeon Falls 3 years ago. Here is what they said to CBC last week.
But I think now I'm more mad. I'm furious that why has something not been done to prevent all of this? How many more lives do we need to take?
Accident can happen to anyone in a split of a second, so make sure we put the safety barriers in place before anything happens.
I don't think anyone else
has to
need to suffer.
Yeah.
This could be easily prevented.
Mohammed Danish Habib and his wife Urush Danish, their 12-year-old son, as I mentioned, drowned at Sturgeon Falls. That was in 2023. Now they're calling for some kind of a barrier or a fence to be put up at the site. Laura Rickard is a professor of communication in University of Maine. She studied risk mitigation of parks in the United States. She's here this morning to talk about how park staff aim to balance public safety and maintaining the natural integrity of areas. Good morning.
Good morning.
A really terrible subject to be talking about. But what's the answer to how that natural integrity of parks can be maintained and safety can be improved?
Yeah, first of all, this is an incredibly tragic incident, and my heart goes out to these families, and I just hope that they are finding some solace in the community support at this point. But yeah, this is a really tricky question, and one of the ways that health and safety, public health officials often think about this is in terms of something called the 3 E's. Now, this is not something I came up with, but it's really been around for decades now. And that would be engineering, enforcement, and education. So one of the things we can do for engineering is we can, build a fence. So we can actually deny access to a particular area. And it sounded like these parents, maybe that was something in their mind of a potential solution here. The good thing about an engineering approach is that it really removes a need for active human decision making. You can't get there, so you don't have to make a decision. You can't get in. The second one is enforcement. So of course we can create and apply laws, rules, regulations. We can mandate safe behaviors like speeding tickets, seatbelt laws, that sort of thing. And the third thing is education, right? We can share safety information. We can promote behavior change through a public campaign, through school programs, through community workshops. We can have informal communication with park rangers and interpretive displays at parks. And the problem is there's trade-offs in all these approaches, right? Some of them are very good at keeping people out, but they might also be pretty bad at impacts on the environment. Some of them are, not great in terms of all of the boxes. We have to find one that checks all of those boxes. And it's tempting for us to think that the education approach is the obvious choice. It's got a low environmental impact. Sometimes all you're doing is putting up a sign or putting someone on a trail side or by the lake. But there are some drawbacks. And just really briefly, when we use an education approach, we have this kind of deficit assumption, right? We assume that there's a deficit in knowledge. And that's not always the case, right? Oftentimes people do know quite a bit. Yeah.
So I want to ask more about your specific research, because you've researched risk mitigation at U.S. parks with all of these things,
Sure.
that you've been citing, how weighing the different trade-offs.
Sure.
What were the findings in terms of how risk is understood by park visitors versus park staff?
Yeah, it's a good question. One of the things that I spent a lot of time thinking about is when is risk desired or desirable and when is it not? This might seem like an obvious question, but it's really kind of context dependent. So some of the activities that we engage in national parks or provincial parks, wherever we are, I was looking in US national parks, things like hiking, swimming, rock climbing, they can really be meaningful because they're self-affirming. They have an inherent degree of risk that makes them worth doing, and it makes the places really unique. And so when I talked to park staff, they said, some of this level of desired risk in places like wilderness areas, that's really a good thing, right? We come to wilderness areas because we know we might, there's a little level of uncertainty there, but that actually makes the experience worthwhile. However, it's context dependent in that you don't want that risk on a highway, right? And you don't want that risk if it's not something that you can choose voluntarily. So desired risk is really dependent on your own level of experience and expertise and on your level of tolerance. And really what I found across many studies that I've done is that probably unsurprisingly, park staff and park visitors often differ, both in their level of experience and expertise, but also in their level of personal tolerance. What do they think is acceptable for being in a park?
Is there a rule for maybe increasing increasing education or increasing some of the safety measures maybe during the busiest months. I'm just thinking about the time of year and summer and who might be exploring. I remember even being on the East Coast, I was climbing Signal Hill in St. John's, and I was quite shocked that at one point I actually had to hold onto a chain to slide around the side of the mountain. And for me, that was like kind of a shocking amount of risk, because I thought, if I actually slip here, I'm not that steady, and I'm not, this isn't something I do regularly. I'm not a big hiker. But it was height of summer. There were tons of people out, and I just wonder, I'm thinking about Manitoba parks being so busy. Here we have an area where we have a number of falls on, it looks like people are slipping on the rocks there. What's the role of parks to sort of assess vigilance where there's been incidents or where there could be risk that is more obviously, higher?
Yeah, great question. I mean, unfortunately, there's no hard and fast rule, right? This differs so much by so many factors. How many resources does a park have? What's the visitation? What's the nature of the visitation? So is a provincial park drawing people mostly from the province, or is, in my case, when I was studying US national parks, people are coming from all over the world. And so that's going to change probably the awareness of different visitors, of just the environment, things like that. I think we can't also not bring up COVID, right? COVID brought a lot of people to all kinds of natural areas and parks that weren't necessarily folks that went to these natural areas before. And so their level of experience was probably quite low and quite different than folks who had already been in these places regularly beforehand. Yeah.
I was just going to ask you before you go this morning, what about legalities? If you do add more signage or a fence, maybe, is there more liability for parks when incidents happen?
That's a tough question. The answer is probably yes. Sometimes yes, right? This is a really litigious question, and this is why it is murky for parks, and it depends a lot on all sorts of federal, local, state level rules and regulations that I'm sure differ between Canada and the US, but is an ongoing problem. Absolutely.
Thank you very much for weighing in, Laura Ricard. We appreciate your time.
Thank you so much.
It's Laura Ricard. She's a professor of communication at University of Maine. A spokesperson for the province confirms the trail to Sturgeon Falls remains closed. They are conducting a safety assessment. Now, there's no timeline for reopening, but as I mentioned, Environment Minister Mike Moyes is expected to speak about this afternoon. Time right now is 8:22. Let's return to hearing from Gail Asper, who played a huge role on the ground floor of bringing the Canadian Museum for Human Rights to Winnipeg, and her criticism of a Palestinian exhibit called Nakba Past and Present.
Well, the exhibit starts with the museum saying that in 1948, Palestinians were displaced by Israeli militia. And what people who are knowledgeable about this era of history is they would like it to say that in 1947, Palestinians were offered their own state by Britain, who was in charge of the Palestine area. They offered a state to the Jewish people and to the Arab people. And that state was accepted. The Jewish state was accepted. This was approved by the United Nations. Canada voted yes to the two-state solution. But the state for the Palestinians was rejected by the Palestinians.
I'm playing that clip of Asper in context of her criticism of the exhibit, but also the fact that she said that her family is now pausing funding over the exhibit, and she feels some changes should be made. The CMHR says it stands behind their curatorial process. Now, we talked about that curatorial process before 8 with Irina Mihalake, who had a lot to say. And so here is part 2 of her weighing in to where we might go in Winnipeg. So when Gail Asper was expressing some of her concerns, she actually used the word bias, suggesting that you don't want bias in an institution. How do museums that are curating exhibits like this one deal with bias that can creep into any of our organizations?
I mean, I would say, and I think I'm gonna stay with this genre of exhibition, because I think I can answer the question based on the kind of exhibition we are talking about. But I think in this particular case, what I witnessed by doing my own research on the exhibition is a case of authority sharing. Like oftentimes, the museum has a voice, But in the community-centered exhibition, there's a lot of efforts to actually remove the voice of the museum as much as possible, right? Of course, the museum is, is developing the exhibition, is supporting the process. But a way to, I think, to remove bias in a situation like this in a community-centric exhibition is to really listen to your participants, to your storytellers, to your narrators, and really take cues from them as to how they want, what words do they want used, and why are those words important to them. And I think that's one way in the case of an exhibition like this one, where the curator can take a step back, listen, and center the vocabularies, the experiences, the objects. Oftentimes, right, when you think about an exhibition, you might start from a different place, but by listening to your communities, the exhibition looks completely different because you have done that listening process right.
When does a curator know enough context has been given, though, if the community is saying two different things to you? For example, the starting point. Maybe if one person says it's fine to start in 1948 and another part of the community says absolutely not, you have to have the context of 1947.
I mean, I think that I'm so glad you asked that question, because I think oftentimes an exhibition is actually not a place that necessarily needs to solve tensions, right? But an exhibition that follows a good process, a community engagement process, and that listens to its interlocutors actually can hold multiple truths. So oftentimes the curatorial strategies that we see in such exhibition is that multiple voices are included, but the idea is not necessarily to have those voices tell the same stories. So reveal that within a community there are tensions, and oftentimes those are tensions brought on by memories, right? People hold the same story in different ways, especially there's so much really interesting research around trauma-informed oral history, right? Trauma alters how one remembers a memory or a story or a life experience, but a museum exhibition can be actually a great place to explain visitors that multiple truths can exist that are based on personal stories and personal memories.
Minister of Canadian Identity and Culture, Mark Miller, who oversees the CMHR as part of his portfolio, as you know, wrote a critique of the exhibit. He says the Canadian Museum for Human Rights made a, quote, error in curation, end quote, at the NACBA exhibit. Then there was a group of about 100 community organizations that have signed a letter calling it political interference in a national museum. Should a politician be able to voice concerns about a museum display? Like what do we see there? Is this a frequent thing that happens?
I mean, generally speaking, it's frowned upon. I mean, I don't think I have to tell you about our neighbors and how museums are being persecuted and museum professionals are being told what they can talk about. So I would say, generally speaking, it's not looked upon favorably when political statements are imposed on museums. Now, of course, everybody is entitled to have an opinion, but what I would like to point out that when somebody with a lot of political power makes such strong claims about an exhibition, in a way they undermine the curatorial process that is very complicated, and to which that particular leader perhaps didn't have access to understand why certain decisions have been made about the language, about the stories, about the material culture. And often something else that happens is a derailment of the message. And I said a little bit earlier that in all these public conversations about this exhibition, we forget what's most important, that this is an exhibition about stories of people who have experienced trauma in their lives, right? So when you derail the message, you actually end up changing the meaning of an exhibition. And I think everybody who holds a political leadership position needs to really take a step back and think about the impact of their statements on the people who are featured in the specific exhibition, on the community.
If the museum feels that some type of amendment is necessary, is that something that also requires consultation first before you decide which amendment or what to do?
it does require a lot of care and a lot of consultation. Of course, I do not know what is happening, what kind of conversations are happening, but from a theoretical standpoint, I would say the conversation needs to start first with the interlocutors, those who have been part of the exhibition, and then unfold from there.
We'll leave it there this morning. Thank you very much for all of your time on this. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Irina Mahalake is an associate professor in the Faculty of Information at the University of Toronto. You can hear more at cbc.ca/Manitoba and on the streaming app as well, including both parts of that interview with Gail Asper yesterday on Information Radio in case you missed it. Also, some of you have been calling us about the exhibit on the listener line, and we will get to some of those calls as well. You can weigh in on anything you hear on the program, 788-3205. Your CBC News from Winnipeg is next.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 8:30, we're already at 23 degrees. It's no surprise to hear we are under a heat warning again in Winnipeg and much of the province, in fact, today. In Winnipeg, mix of sun and cloud, chance of showers, a high of 31, a humidex of 40. A Manitoba business says a 50% tariff on Canadian exports would be a serious hit to its bottom line. John McLaughlin is Vice President of Operations at Foam Pack, a Winnipeg company that makes products like floor underlay and packaging. As U.S. President Donald Trump ramps up his trade war against Canada and threatens to implement tariffs, McLaughlin says his business would not be able to absorb those added costs.
The tariff at a 50% rate pretty much eliminates our ability to be competitive in the U.S. markets. It's already a competitive industry, and it's not an option to increase our prices by 50%. We will just lose those customers or accounts.
Trump threatens 50% tariffs on a variety of Canadian exports starting in August. McLaughlin says if those tariffs drive up costs, Foam Pack would have to look at moving its manufacturing to the U.S. or downsizing or even shutting down. He says all of those scenarios would come with job losses. A Manitoba mother who lost her son to drowning in 2023 says new efforts to prevent similar tragedies at Sturgeon Falls are coming too late. Usad Habib slipped into fast-moving rapids after falling from the rocks at the end of the Sturgeon Falls Trail in the Whiteshell 3 years ago. The provincial government is now keeping that path closed, pending new safety measures, after two brothers drowned last week in that same area. Habib's mother, Orosh Danish, says the province should have limited public access after her son's death.
We were grieving, but the authorities knew. Everybody was seeing that. So why didn't no one ever thought of doing this? Why did something else need to be happen? Something needs to reoccur in order to get the safety measures done.
Danish now wants the province to also inspect other Manitoba Park trails for similar drowning risks. The city of Steinbach is trying to solve a case of missing plaques. Several bronze commemorative plaques have disappeared from Steinbach parks and public spaces. City workers noticed 6 of the plaques missing while completing routine park work this summer. Mayor Earl Funk says the stolen plaques honored people and highlighted stories key to the community's founding. He adds the thefts are in incredibly bad taste and lack respect. The city says it is committing to replacing the plaques at a cost of about $25,000, but adds their cultural value is irreplaceable. A former NDP cabinet minister responsible for Manitoba Hydro says governments haven't done enough to ensure there's more wind power in this province. Tim Sale was energy minister from 2002 to 2004 when Gary Dewar was premier. Sale pushed to create wind farms in Saint Leon. Now he is disappointed Manitoba only has 2 wind farms.
In Alberta, Saskatchewan, BC, Ontario, Quebec, they all have major wind power. Now, why our government has not pushed hydro harder, I don't know.
Manitoba Hydro plans to partner with Indigenous-led companies to create 600 megawatts of wind power. Sale says Hydro ought to do more. Manitoba's only supervised drug consumption site will fully open August 11th. That is according to the provincial government. A spokesperson tells CBC News Aboriginal Health and Wellness, which will operate the site at 366 Henry, has more training lined up for staff. The spokesperson says once it is open, the site will operate Tuesdays to Saturdays from 11 in the morning until 6:45 at night. New housing developments in a southeast Manitoba community have some there feeling it's going to make the small town feel vanish. The Oak River Meadow development in Ile-des-Chênes will add roughly 1,000 homes, 25 kilometers south of Winnipeg. Richot councillor Shane Pelche says that will bump the population of the community to 4,000.
If you live and breathe like you're in a small town, then that's the feeling you're going to get. And I hope to see that continue with any new resident that comes on board.
Census data shows the population of Ile-des-Chênes was about 1,500 in 2021. Pelche also says water and sewer capacity won't be an issue as that infrastructure is being built into this development. You can find the latest news updated throughout the day. All you have to do is head to cbc.ca/Manitoba.
All right, thanks, Heather.
Thank you.
That's Heather Wells from our news department. Big thanks to her, as well as to Joe Nicolo and Darren Bernhardt out there. In our Studio 15 crew and control room, Corey Funk, Abby Adeyemi, and Darren Marash. Our producers, Nellie Gonzalez, and the senior producer of audio at CBC Manitoba, Leif Larson. Thanks to them. And then people with items in the show this morning, our associate producers who worked hard on a lot of the show. Emily Enns, thank you. Caitlin Monkman, thank you. And thanks to Sierra Sanders as well. All right. I mentioned Corey and Abby. Corey's here first with our commute.
A quiet commute overall. Just heads up on Gray Street. There's construction starting today. Northbound and southbound. That's going to last for about 3 days till the 31st.
All right, Abby.
Widespread heat warnings pushing temperatures to the 40s across southern Manitoba and up. Not just lighter cooler, but you're still going to feel the heat. The south, we are seeing temperatures around the 20s at this time with some sunshine, but up north, it's close to 25 with a risk of thunderstorms present across board today. Winnipeg, we're closing the show at 21. We get to 31 today.
All right, water it all. Water the plants, water the garden, water the kids, water yourself. Take care, everybody. Stay well, and we'll talk to you again tomorrow right here on Information Radio. I'm Marcy Marcusa. This is CBC.